Chapter 24 of The Worm Ouroboros. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jason Mills. The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Edisson. Chapter 24. A King in Crothering. How the Lord Corineus would take unto himself a queen in Demonland, and made him a bridal feast thereto, wherein is a notable instance how unto them which the gods do love, helpers are raised up and comforters, even in the midst of their enemies. That same evening Corineus let dight a banquet in the chamber of the moon for some 20 of his chiefest men, a very pompous and kingly entertainment. And conceiving that he might now very well avail to accomplish his pleasure touching the Lady Mevrian, he sent her word by one of his gentlemen that she should attend him there. And she sending answer to tell him gently all else in the castle was at his service, but for herself she was quite fordone and greatly desired rest and sleep that night, he fell a laughing immoderately, and saying, "A most unseasonable desire, and one that smacketh besides of mockery, since well she knoweth what this night I do intend. Wish her to repair to us, and that right swiftly, lest I fetch her." To that message sent her came she in a short while herself to answer, dressed all in funereal black, her gown and close-fitting bodice of black sendal, slashed with black sarcenet, and about her throat a chain of sapphires darkly lustrous. Very nobly she carried her head. Framed with the piled and braided masses of her night-dark hair, her face showed pale indeed, but unruffled and undismayed. All at her coming in stood up to greet her, and Corineus said, "Lady, thou didst change thy mind quickly, since thou didst first affirm thou never wouldst yield up Crothering unto me." "As quickly as I might, my lord," said she, "for I saw I was wrong." He abode silent a minute, his eyes like amorous surfeiters overrunning her fair form. Then said he, "Thou didst wish to purchase safety for thy friends?" She answered, "Yes." "For thine own self," said Corineus, "it had made no jot of difference. Be witness unto me the omnisciency of the gods, whereto is nothing concealable. I mean thee only good." "My lord," said she, "I embrace the comfort of that word, and know that good to me is mine own freedom, not conditions of any man's choosing." Whereto he, being well tippled with wine, framing the most lovely countenance he might, made answer, "I doubt not but to-night, madam, thou shalt be well advised to choose that highest condition, until to-day unknown, which I shall prefer thee, to be queen of Demonland." She thanked him in her best manner, but said she was minded to forego that supposedly pleasing eminence. "How?" said he. "Is it too little a thing for thee? Or is it as I think that thou laughest?" She said, "My lord, it should little beseem me, that am of the seed of men of war since long generations, to trap my mind with the false shows of a greatness that is gone. Yet I pray you forget not this. The dominion of the demons hath used to soar a pitch above common royalty, and like the eye of day regarded kings from above. And for this style of queen thou offerest me, I say unto thee it is an addition I desire not, who am sister unto him that writ that writing above the gate, that all ye had tasted the truth thereof, had he been here to meet with you." Corineus said, "True it is, some have outbragged the world, yet I ere this have used them like knaves. My jackboot hath known things in Corsi, madam, I'll not gull thy heart to tell thee of." But perceiving a great glow of disdainful anger blaze in Mevrian's eye, "Cry you mercy," said he, "incomparable lady, this was beside the mark. I would not sully our new friendship with memories of— Ho there, a chair beside me for the queen." But Mevrian made them sit it on the far side of the board, and there sat her down, saying, "I pray thee, my lord Corineus, unsay that word. Thou knowest it dislikes me." He looked on her in silence for a minute, leaned forward across the board, his lips parted a little, and between them his breath coming and going thick and swift. "Well," he said, "sit there and it like thee, madam, and manage my delights by stages. Last year the wide world betwixt us, this year the mountains, yester eve Crothering walls, to-night a table's breadth, and ere night be done not so much as—" Grow so the wild deer look in Lady Mevrian's eyes. She said, "This is talk I have not learned to understand, my lord." "I shall learn it thee," said Corineus, his face aflame. "Lovers live by love as larks by leeks. By Satan, I do love thee as thou wert the heart out of my body." "My lord Corineus," said she, "we ladies of the north have little stomach for these fashions, howe'er they commend them in waterish witchland. If thou'lt have my friendship, bring me service therefore, and that in season. This is no fit table talk. Why, there, said he, we are in fast agreement. I'll blithely show thee all this, and a quainter thing beside, in thine own chamber. But 'twas beyond my hopes thou'dst grant me that so suddenly. Are we so happy? In great shame and anger the Lady Mevrian stood up from the table. Carinius, something unsteadily, leaped to his feet. For all his bigness, so tall she was, she looked him level in the eye. And he, as when in the face of a night-ranging beast suddenly a man brandishes a bright light, stood stupid under that gaze, the springs of action strangely frozen in him on a sudden, and said sullenly, Madam, I am a soldier. Truly mine affection standeth not upon compliment. That I am impatient, put the white on thy beauty, not on me. Pray you, be seated. But Mevrian answered, Thy language, my lord, is too bold and vicious. Come to me tomorrow, if thou wilt, but I'll have thee know, patience only and courtesy shall get good of me. She turned to the door. He, as if with the turning away of that lady's eyes the spell was broke, cried loudly upon his folk to stay her, but there was none stirred. Therewith he, as one that cannot command his own indecent appetites, or setting bench and board in eager haste to lay hands on her, it so betided that he tripped up with one of these and fell a-sprawling. And ere he was gotten again on his feet, the Lady Mevrian was gone from the hall. He rose up painfully, proffering from his lips a mud-spring of barbarous and filthy imprecations, so that Laxus, who helped raise him up, was fain to chide him, saying, My lord, unman not thyself by such a bestial transformation. Are not we yet with harness on our backs, in a kingdom newly gained, the old lords thereof discomfited indeed, but not yet ta'en nor slain, studying belike to raise new powers against us? And above such and so many affairs wilt thou make place for the allurements of love? Ay, answered he, nor shall such a sapless ninny as thou avail to cross me therein. Ask thy little gameson Sriva, when thou comest home to wed her, if I be not better able than thou to please a woman. She'll tell thee. I' the main season meddle not in matters that be too high for such as thou. Both Gro and the sons of Corrund were by, and heard those words. The Lord Laxus schooled himself to laugh. He turned toward Gro, saying, The general is far gone in wine. Gro, marking Laxus's face flushed red to the ears for all his studied carelessness, answered him softly, 'Tis so, my lord, and in wine is truth. Now Carinius, bethinking him that it was yet early, and the feast barely well begun, let set a guard on all the passages which led to Mevrian's lodgings, to the end that she might not issue therefrom, but there wait on his pleasure. That done, he bade renew their feasting. No stint of luscious meats and wines was there, and the lords of Witchland sat them down again right eagerly to the good banquet. Laxus spoke secretly to Gro. I wot well thou takest in very ill part these doings. Let it stand firm in thy mind, that if thou shouldst deem it fitting to play him a trick and steal the lady from him, I'll not stand i' the way on't. In a bunch of cards, said Gro, knaves wait upon the kings. It were not so ill done, and we made it so here. I heard a bird sing lately thou hadst a quarrel to him. Thou must not think so, answered Laxus. I'll give thee still a Roland for thine Oliver, and tell thee 'tis most apparent thyself dost love this lady. Gro said, Thou chargest me with a sweet folly is foreign to my nature, being a grave scholar, that if ever I did frequent such toys, have long eschewed them. Only me seems 'tis an ill thing if she must be given over unto him against her will. Thou knowest him of a rough and mere soldierly mind, besides his dissolute company with other women. Tush, said Laxus, he may go his gait for me, and be as close as a butterfly with the lady, but out of policy 'twere best rid her hence. I'd not be seen in't. That provided, I'll second thee all ways. If he lie here the summer long in amorous dalliance, justly might the king upbraid us that midst of the day's sport we gave his good hawk a gorge, and so lost him the game. I see, said Gro, smiling in himself, thou art a man of sober government and understanding, and thinkest first of Witchland, and that is both just and right. Now went the feast forward with great surfeiting and swigging of wine. Mevrian's women that were there, much against their own good will, to serve the banquet, set ever fresh dishes before the feasters, and poured forth fresh wines, golden, and tawny, and ruby red, in the goblets of jade and crystal and hammered gold. The air in the chamber was thick with the steam of bake-meats, and the vinous breath of the feasters, so that the lustre of the opal lamps burned coppery, and about each lamp was a bush of coppery beams, like the beams about a torch that burns in a fog. Great was the clatter of cups, and great the clinking of glass, as in their drunkenness the witches cast down the priceless beakers on the floor, smashing them in shivers. And huge din there was of laughter and song. and amidst of it women's voices singing, albeit near drowned in the hurly-burly, for they constrained Mevrian's damosels in Crothering to sing and dance before them, howsoever woeful at heart. And to other entertainment than this of dance and song was many a black-bearded reveller willing to constrain them, and sought occasion thereto, but this by stealth only, and out of eye-shot of their general. For heavily enow was his wrath fallen on some who rashly flaunted in his face their light disports, presuming to hunt in such fields while their lord went still a-fasting. After a while Hemming, who sat next to Grow, began to say to him in a whisper, "This is an ill banquet." "Meseems rather 'tis a very good banquet," said Grow. "Would I saw some other issue thereof," said Hemming, "than that he purposeth. Or how thinkest thou?" "I scarce can blame him," answered Grow. "'Tis a most lovesome lady." "Is not the man a most horrible open swine? And is it to be endured that he should work his lewd purpose on so sweet a lady?" "What have I to do with it?" said Grow. "What less than I?" said Hemming. "It dislikes thee?" said Grow. "Art thou a man?" said Hemming. "And she that hateth him besides as bloody Atropos." Grow looked him a swift searching look in the eye. Then he whispered, his head bowed over some raisins he was a-picking, "If this is thy mind, 'tis well." And speaking softly, with here and there some snatch of louder discourse or jest between whiles, lest he should seem too earnestly engaged in secret talk, he taught Hemming orderly and clearly what he had to do, discovering to him that Laxus also, being bit with jealousy, was of their accord. "Thy brother Cargo is aptest for this. He standeth about her height, and by reason of his youth is yet beardless. Go find him out. Rehearse unto him word by word all this talking that hath been between me and thee. Corineus holdeth me too deep suspect to suffer me out of his eye tonight. Unto you sons of Corund therefore is the task, and I biding at his elbow may avail to hold him here i' the hall till it be performed. Go, and wise counsel and good speed wait on your attempts." The Lady Mevrian, being escaped to her own chamber in the south tower, sat by an eastern window that looked across the gardens and the lake, past the sea-locks of Straparden and the dark hills of Eastmark, to the stately ranges of Far, which overhang in mid-air Moresdale and Mirkdale and Swart Riverdale and the inland sea of Throwwater. The last lights of day still lingered on their loftier summits, on Ironbeak, on the gaunt wall of Scarta, and on the distant twin towers of Dena, seen beyond the lower Moresdale range in the depression of Neverdale Hawes. Behind them rolled up the ascent of heaven the wheels of quiet night. Holy night, mother of the gods, mother of sleep, tender nurse of all little birds and beasts that dwell in the field, and all tired hearts and weary. Mother besides of strange children, of frights and rapes and midnight murders bold. Mevrian sat there till all the earth was blurred in darkness, and the sky a-throb with starlight, for it was yet an hour until the rising of the moon. And she prayed to Lady Artemis, calling her by her secret names, and saying, "Goddess and maiden, chaste and holy, triune goddess, which in heaven art, and on the earth huntress divine, and also hast in the veiled sunless places below earth thy dwelling, viewing the large stations of the dead, save me and keep me that am thy maiden still." She turned the ring upon her finger, and scanned in the gathering gloom the bezel thereof, which was of that chrysoprase that is hid in light and seen in darkness, being as a flame by night, but in the daytime yellow or wan. And behold, it palpitated with splendour from withinward, and was as if 1,000 golden sparks danced and swirled within the stone. While she pondered what interpretation lay likeliest on this sudden flowering of unaccustomed splendour within the chrysoprase, behold, one of her women of the bedchamber who brought lights said, standing before her, "Twain of those lords of Witchland would speak with your ladyship in private." "Two," said Mevrian. "There's safety yet in numbers. Which be they?" "Highness, they be tall and slim of body. They be black advised. They bear them discreet as dormice, and most commendably sober." Mevrian asked, "Is it the Lord Grow? Hath he a great black beard, much curled and perfumed?" "Highness, I marked not that either weareth a beard," said the woman, "nor their names I know not." "Well," said Mevrian, "admit them, and do thou and thy fellows attend me while I give them audience." So it was done according to her bidding, and there entered in those two sons of Corund. They greeted her with respectful salutations, and Hemming said, "Our errand, most worshipful lady, was for thine own ear only, if it please thee." Mevrian said to her women, "Make fast the doors, and attend me in the antechamber." "And now, my lords," said she, and waited for them to begin. She was seated sideways in the window, betwixt the light and the dark. The crystal lamps shining from within the room showed deeper darknesses in her hair than night's darkness without. The curve of her white arms resting in her lap was like the young moon cradled above the sunset. A falling breeze out of the south came laden with the murmur of the sea, far away beyond fields and vineyards, restlessly surging even in that calm weather amid the sea caves of Strapadan. It was as if the sea and the night-enfolding demonland gasped in indignation at such things as Corineus, holding himself already an undoubted possessor of her desires, devised for that night in Crothering. Those brethren stood abashed in the presence of such rare beauty. Hemming, with a deep breath, spake and said, Madam, what slender opinion soever thou hast held of us of Witchland, I pray thee be satisfied that I and my kinsmen have sought to thee now with a clean heart to do thee service. Princess, said she, scarce might ye blame me did I misdoubt you. Yet, seeing that my life's days have been not among ambidexters and coney-catchers, but lovers of clean hands and open dealing, not even after that which I this night endured will mine heart believe that all civility is worn away in Witchland. Did I not freely receive Corineus' self when I did open my gates to him, firmly believing him to be a king and not a ravening wolf? Then said Hemming, Canst thou wear armour, madam? Thou art something of an height with my brother. To bring thee past the guard, if thou go armed as I shall conduct thee, the wine they have drunken shall be thy minister. I have provided an horse. In the likeness of my young brother mayst thou ride forth to-night out of this castle, and win clean away. But in thine own shape thou mayst never pass from these thy lodgings, for he hath set a guard thereon, being resolved, come thereof what may, to visit thee here this night, in thine own chamber, madam. The sounds of furious revelry floated up from the banquet-chamber. Mevrian heard by snatches the voice of Corineus singing an unseemly song. As in the presence of some dark influence that threatened an ill she might not comprehend, yet felt her blood quail and her heart grow sick because of it, she looked on those brethren. She said at last, Was this your plan? Hemming answered, It was the Lord Groa did most ingeniously conceive it, but Corineus, as he hath ever held him in distrust, and most of all when he hath drunken overmuch, keepeth him most firmly at his elbow. Cargo now did off his armour, and Mevrian, calling in her women to take this and other gear, fared straightway to an inner chamber to change her fashion. Hemming said to his brother, Thou shalt need to go about it with great circumspection, to come off when we are gone, so as thou not be espied. Were I thou, I should be tempted for the rareness of the jest to await his coming, and assay whether thou couldst not make as good a counterfeit Mevrian as she a counterfeit Cargo. Thou, said Cargo, mayst well laugh and be gay, thou that must conduct her, and art resolved, I dare lay my head to a turnip, to do thy utmost endeavour to despoil Corineus of that felicity he hath to-night decreed him, and bless thyself therewith. Thou hast fallen, answered Hemming, into a most barbarous thought. Shall my tongue be so false a traitor to mine heart as to say I love not this lady? Compare but her beauty and my youth together, how should it other be? But with such a height of fervour I do love her, that I'd as lief offer violence to a star of heaven, as require of her aught but honest. Said Cargo, What said the wise little boy to his elder brother? Sith thou'st gotten the cake, brother, I must e'en make shift with the crumbs. When you are gone, and all wished and quiet, and I left here amid the waiting women, it shall go hard but I'll teach 'em somewhat afore good night. Now opened the door of the inner chamber, and there stood before them the Lady Mevrian, armed and helmed. She said, "'Tis no light matter to halt before a cripple. Think you this will pass i' the dark, my lords?" They answered 'twas beyond all commendation excellent. "I'll thank thee now, Prince Cargo," said she, stretching out her hand. He bowed and kissed it in silence. "This harness," she said, "shall be a keepsake unto me of a noble enemy. Would some day I might call thee friend, for such wise hast thou borne thee this night." Therewith, bidding young Cargo adieu, she with his brother went forth from the chamber, and through the antechamber to that shadowy stairway where Corineus' soldiers stood sentinel. These, as many more be drowned in the beaker than in the ocean, not over heedful after their tipplings, seeing two go by together with clanking armour, and knowing Hemming's voice when he answered the challenge, made no question but here were Corin's sons returning to the banquet. So passed he and she lightly by the sentinels, but as they fared by the lofty corridor without the chamber of the moon, the doors of that chamber opening suddenly left and right, there came forth torch-bearers and minstrels 2 by 2, as in a progress, with cymbals clashing and flutes and tambourines, so that the corridor was full filled with the flare of flamboys and the din. In the midst walked the Lord Corineus. The lusty blood within him burned scarlet in all his shining face, and made stand the veins like cords on the strong neck and arms and hands of him. The thick curls above his brow where they strayed below his coronal of sleeping nightshade, were adrip with sweat. Plain it was he was in no good trim, after that shrewd knock on the head Astar that day had given him, to withstand deep quaffings. He went between Gro and Laxus, swaying heavily now on the arm of this one, now of the other, his right hand beating time to the music of the bridal song. Mevrian whispered to Hemming, "Let us bear out a good face so long as we be alive." They stood aside, hoping to be passed by unnoticed, for retreat nor concealment was there none. But Corineus, his eye lighting on them, stopped and hailed them, catching them each by an arm and crying, "Hemming, thou art drunk! Cargo, thou art drunk, sweet youth! 'Tis a damnable folly, drink as you be, and these bonny wenches I've provided you. How shall I satisfy 'em, think ye, when they come to me with their plaints to mourn, that each must sit with a snoring drunkard's head in her lap the night long?" Mevrian, as if she had all her part by rote, was leaned this while heavily upon Hemming, hanging her head. Hemming could think on naught likelier to say than, "Truly, O Corineus, we be sober." "Thou liest," said Corineus. "'Twas ever sign manifest of drunkenness to deny it. Look you, my lords, I deny not I am drunk. Therefore is sign manifest I am drunk, sign manifest I am sober. But the hour calleth to other work than questioning of these high matters. Set on!" So speaking, he reeled heavily against Gro, and, as if moved by some airy influence that, whispering him of schemings afoot, yet conspired with the wine that he had drunken to make him look all otherwise for treason than where it lay under his hand to discover it, gripped Gro by the arm, saying, "Bide by me, goblin, thou wert best. I do love thee very discreetly, and will still hold thee by the ears, to see thou bite me not, nor go no more a-gadding." Being by such happy fortune delivered out of this peril, Hemming and Mevrian, with what prudent haste they might, and without mishap or hindrance, got them their horses, and fared north of the main gate between the marble hippogriffs, whose mighty forms shone above them stark in the low beams of the rising moon. So they rode silently through the gardens and the home meads, and thence to the wild woods beyond, quickening now their pace to a gallop on the yielding turf. So hard they rode, the air of the windless April night was lashed into storm about their faces. The trample and thunder of hoofbeats, and the flying glimpses of the trees were to young Hemming but an undertone to the thunder of his blood, which night and speed and that lady galloping beside him knee to knee set a gallop within him. But to Mevrian's soul, as she galloped along those woodland rides, those moonlight glades, these things and night and the steadfast stars attuned a heavenlier music, so that she waxed momently wondrous peaceful at heart, as with the most firm assurance that not without the abiding glory of Demonland must the great mutations of the world be acted, and but for a little should their evil willers usurp her dear brother's seat in Crothering. They drew rein in a clearing beside a broad stretch of water. Pine woods rose from its further edge, shadowy in the moonshine. Mevrian rode to a little eminence that stood above the water, and turned her eyes toward Crothering. Save by her instructed and loving eye, scarce might it be seen, many miles away be east of them, dimmed in the obscure soft radiance under the moon. So sat she awhile, looking on golden Crothering, while her horse grazed quietly, and Hemming at her elbow held his peace, only beholding her. At last, looking back and meeting his gaze, "Prince Hemming," she said, "from this place goeth a hidden path north about beside the firth, and a dry road over the marsh, and a ford, and an upland horseway leadeth into Westmark. Here and always in Demonland I might fare blindfold, and here I'll say farewell. My tongue is a poor orator, but I mind me of the words of the poet, where he saith, My mind is like to the asbeston stone, which if it once be heat in flames of fire, denieth to become cold again. Be the latter issue of these wars in my great kinsman's victory, as I most firmly trow it shall be, or in Gerasis his, I shall not forget this experiment of your nobility, manifested unto me this night." But Hemming, still beholding her, answered not a word. She said, "How fares the queen thy stepmother? 7 summers ago this summer I was in Norvas but Lord Corran's wedding feast, and stood by her at the bridal. Is she yet so fair?" He answered, "Madam, as June bringeth the golden rose unto perfection, so waxeth her beauty with the years." "She and I," said Mevrian, "were playmates, she the elder by 2 summers. Is she yet so masterful?" "Madam, she is a queen," said Hemming, nailing his very eyes on Mevrian. Her face half turned towards him, sweet mouth half closed, clear eyes uplifted toward the east, showed dim in the glamour of the moon, and the lilt of her body was as a lily fallen a-dreaming beside some enchanted lake at midnight. With a dry throat he said, Lady, until tonight, I had not supposed there lived on earth a woman more beautiful than she. Therewith the love that was in him went like a wind and like an upsweeping darkness athwart his brain. As one who has too long, unbold, unresolved, delayed to lift that door's latch which must open on his heart's true home, he caught his arms about her. Her cheek was soft to his kiss, but deadly cold. Her eyes like a wild bird's caught in a purse net. His brother's armour that cased her body was not so dead nor so hard under his hand, as to his love that yielding cheek, that alien look. He said, as one a stagger for his wits in the presence of some unlooked-for chance, "Thou dost not love me?" Mevrian shook her head, putting him gently away. Like the passing of a fire on a dry heath in summer, the flame of his passion was passed by, leaving but a smouldering desolation of scornful, sullen wrath at himself and fate. He said in a low, shamed voice, "I pray you forgive me, madam." Mevrian said, "Prince, the gods give thee good night. Be kind to Crothering. I have left there an evil steward." So saying, she reined up her horse's head and turned down westward towards the firth. Hemming watched her an instant, his brain a reel. Then, striking spurs to his horse's flanks, so that the horse reared and plunged, he rode away at a great pace east again, through the woods to Crothering. End of chapter 24. Chapter 25 of The Worm Ouroboros. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jason Mills. The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Edisson. Chapter 25. Lord Grow and the Lady Mevrian. How the Lord Grow, conducted by a strange enamorment with lost causes, fared with none save this to be his guide, into the regions of Neverdale, and there beheld wonders, and tasted again for a season the goodness of those things he did most desire. 90 days and a day after these doings aforesaid, in the last hour before the dawn, was the Lord Grow a-riding toward the paling east, down from the hills of Eastmark to the fords of Morderdale. At a walking pace his horse came down to the waterside, and halted with fetlocks awash. His flanks were wet and his wind gone, as from swift faring on the open fell since midnight. He stretched down his neck, sniffed the fresh river water, and drank. Grow turned in the saddle, listening, his left hand thrown forward to slack the reins, his right flat planted on the crupper. But naught there was to hear save the babble of waters in the shallows, the sucking noise of the horse drinking, and the plash and crunch of his hooves when he shifted feet among the pebbles. Before and behind and on either hand, the woods and strath and circling hills showed dim in the obscure grey betwixt darkness and twilight. A light mist hid the stars. Naught stirred save an owl that flitted like a phantom out from a holly bush in a craggy bluff a bowshot or more downstream, crossing Grow's path and lighting on a branch of a dead tree above him on the left, where she sat as if to observe the goings of this man and horse that trespassed in this valley of quiet night. Grow leaned forward to pat his horse's neck. "Come, gossip, we must on," he said, "and marvel not if thou find no rest, going with me which could never find any steadfast stay under the moon's globe." So they forded that river, and fared through low, rough grasslands beyond, and by the skirts of a wood up to an open heath, and so a mile or two, still eastward, till they turned to the right down a broad valley, and crossed a river above a water's meet, and so east again, up the bed of a stony stream, and over this to a rough mountain track that crossed some boggy ground, and then climbed higher and higher above the floor of the narrowing valley, to a pass between the hills. At length the slope slackened, and they passing as through a gateway between two high mountains which impended sheer and stark on either hand, came forth upon a moor of ling and bog myrtle, strewn with lakelets and abounding in streams and moss-hags and outcrops of the living rock. And the mountain peaks afar stood round that moorland waste like warrior kings. Now was colour waking in the eastern heavens, the bright shining morning beginning to clear the earth. Conies scurried to cover before the horse's feet. Small birds flew up from the heather. Some red deer stood at gaze in the fern, then tripped away southward. A moorcock called. Grow said in himself, "How shall not common opinion account me mad, so rash and presumptuous dangerously to put my life in hazard? Nay, against all sound judgment. And this folly I enact in that very season when by patience and courage and my politic wisdom I had won that in despite of fortune's teeth which obstinately hitherto she had denied me. when after the brunts of divers tragical fortunes I had marvellously gained the favour and grace of the king, who very honourably placed me in his court, and tendereth me, I well think, so dearly as he doth the balls of his 2 eyes. He put off his helm, baring his white forehead and smooth black curling locks to the airs of morning, flinging back his head to drink deep through his nostrils the sweet strong air and its peaty smell. Yet is common opinion the fool, not I, he said. He that imagineth after his labours to attain unto lasting joy, as well may he beat water in a mortar. Is there not in the wild benefit of nature instances enow to laugh this folly out of fashion? A fable of great men that arise and conquer the nations. Day goeth up against the tyrant night. How delicate a spirit is she! How like a fawn she footeth it upon the mountains, pale pitiful light matched with the primeval dark. But every sweet hovers in her battalions, and every heavenly influence, coolth of the wayward little winds of morning, flowers awakening, birds a carol, dews a sparkle on the fine-drawn webs the tiny spinners hang from fern frond to thorn, from thorn to wet dainty leaf of the silver birch. The young day laughing in her strength, wild with her own beauty, fire and life and every scent and colour born anew to triumph over chaos and slow darkness and the kinless night. But because day at her dawning hours hath so bewitched me, must I yet love her when glutted with triumph she settles to garish noon? Rather turn, as now I turn, to demonland, in the sad sunset of her pride. And who dares call me turncoat, who do but follow now as I have followed this rare wisdom all my days, to love the sunrise and the sundown, and the morning and the evening star, since there only abideth the soul of nobility, true love, and wonder, and the glory of hope and fear. So brooding he rode at an easy pace, bearing east and a little north across the moor, falling because of the strange harmony that was between outward things and the inward thoughts of his heart, into a deep study. So came he to the moor's end, and entered among the skirts of the mountains beyond, crossing low passes, threading a way among woods and watercourses, up and down, about and about. The horse led him which way that he would, for no heed nor advice had he of aught about him, for cause of the deep contemplation that he had within himself. It was now high noon. The horse and his rider were come to a little dell of green grass, with a beck winding in the midst, with cool water flowing over a bed of shingle. Above the dell grew many trees, both tall and straight. Above the trees, high mountain crags abake in the sun showed ethereal through the shimmering heat. A murmur of waters, a hum of tiny wings flitting from flower to flower, the sound of the horse grazing on the lush pasture. There was naught else to hear. Not a leaf moved, not a bird. The hush of the summer noonday, breathless, burnt through with the sun, more awful than any shape of night, paused above that lonely dell. Gros, as if waked by the very silence, looked quickly about him. The horse felt belike in his bones his rider's unease. He gave over his feeding and stood alert with wild eye and quivering flanks. Gros patted and made much of him. Then, guided by some inward prompting, the reason whereof he knew not, turned west by a small tributary beck, and rode softly toward the wood. Here he was stopped with a number of trees so thickly placed together that he was afraid he should with riding through be swept from the saddle. So he lighted down, tied his horse to an oak, and climbed the bed of the little stream till he was come whence he might look north, over the tree-tops, to a green terrace about at a level with him, and some 50 paces distant along the hillside, shielded from the north by 3 or 4 great rowan trees on the far side of it, and on the terrace a little tarn or rock cistern of fair water, very cool and deep. He paused, steadying himself with his left hand by a jutting rock overgrown with rose campion. Surely no children of men were these, footing it on that secret lawn beside that fountain's brink, nor no creatures of mortal kind. Such it may be were the goats and kids and soft-eyed does, that on their hind legs merrily danced among them, but never such those others of manly shape, and with pointed hairy ears, shaggy legs, and cloven hoofs, nor those maidens white of limb, beneath the tread of whose feet the blue gentian and the little golden cinquefoil bent not their blossoms, so airy light was their dancing. To make the music, little goat-footed children with long pointed ears sat on a hummock of turf-clad rock, piping on pan-pipes, their bodies burnt to the hue of red earth by the wind and the sun. But whether because their music was too fine for mortal ears, or for some other reason, Gros might hear no sound of that piping. The heavy silence of the waste white noon was lord of the scene, while the mountain nymphs and the simple genii of sedge and stream and crag and moorland solitude threaded the mazes of the dance. The Lord Grow stood still in great admiration, saying in himself, "What means my drowsy head to dream such fancies? Spirits of ill have I heretofore beheld in their manifestations. I have seen fantasticos framed and presented by art magic. I have dreamed strange dreams o' nights. But till this hour I did account it an idle tale of poets' feigning, that amid woods, forests, fertile fields, sea-coasts, shores of great rivers and fountain brinks, and also upon the tops of huge and high mountains, do still appear unto certain favoured eyes the sundry sorted nymphs and fieldish demigods. Which thing if I now verily behold, 'tis a great marvel, and sorteth well with the strange allurements whereby this oppressed land hath so lately found a means to govern mine affections." And he thought a while, reasoning thus in his mind, "If this be but an apparition, it hath no essence to do me a hurt. If, o' the contrary, these be very essential beings, needs must they joyfully welcome me and use me well, being themselves the true vital spirits of many mountain demon-land, unto whose comfort and the restorement of her old renown and praise I have with such a strange determination bent all my painful thoughts and resolution." So on the motion he discovered himself and hailed them. The wild things bounded away and were lost among the flanks of the hills. The capripeds, leaving on the instant their piping or their dancing, crouched watching him with distrustful, startled eyes. Only the oreads, still in a dazzling drift, pursued their round. Quiet maiden mouths, beautiful breasts, slender lithe limbs, hand joined to delicate hand, parting and closing and parting again, in rhythms of unstaled variety. Here one that with white arms clasped behind her head, where her braided hair was as burnished gold, circled and swayed with a languorous motion. Here another that leaped and paused, hovering a tiptoe, like an arrow of the sun shot through the leafy roof of an old pine forest, when the warm hill wind stirs the tree-tops and opens a tiny window to the sky. Grow went toward them along the grassy hillside. When he was come a dozen paces, the strength was gone from his limbs. He kneeled down, crying out and saying, "Divinities of earth, deny me not, neither reject me, albeit cruelly have I till now oppressed your land, but will do so no more. The footsteps of mine overtrodden virtue lie still as bitter accusations unto me. Bring me of your mercy where I may find out them that possessed this land, and offer them atonement, who were driven forth because of me and mine, to be outlaws in the woods and mountains." So spake he, bowing his head in sorrow. And he heard, like the trembling of a silver lute-string, a voice in the air that cried, "North 'tis and north 'tis. Why need we further?" He raised his eyes. The vision was gone. Only the noon and the woodland, silent, solitary, dazzling, were about and above him. Lord Grow came now to his horse again, and mounted and rode north away through the fells all that summer afternoon, full of cloudy fancies. When it was eventide, his way was high up along the steep side of a mountain, between the screes and the grass, following a little path made by the wild sheep. Far beneath in the valley was a small river tortuously flowing along a bouldery bed, amid hillocks of old moraines which were like waves of a sea of grass-clad earth. The July sun wheeled low, flinging the shadows of the hills far up the westward-facing slopes where Grow was a-riding. But where he rode, and above him, the hillside was yet aglow with the warm, low sunshine, and the distant peak that shut in the head of the valley, rearing his huge front like the gable of a house, with sweeping ribs of bare rock and scree, and a crest of crag like a great breaker frozen to stone in mid-career, bathed yet in a radiance of opalescent light. Turning the shoulder of the hillside, at a place where the hill was cut by a shallow gully, he saw before him a hollow or sheltered nook. There, protected by the great body of the hill from the blasts of the east and north, 2 rowan trees and some hollies grew in the clefts of the rock above the watercourse. Under their shadow was a cave, not large, but so big as a man might well abide in and be dry in wild weather, and beyond it on the right a little waterfall, so beautiful it was a wonder to behold. This was the fashion of it, a slab of rock, twice a man's height, tilted a little forward from the hill, so that the water fell clear from its upper edge in a thin stream into a rocky basin. The water in the basin was clear and deep, but a churn always with bubbles from the plunging jet from above, and over all the rocks about it grew mosses and lichens and little water-flowers, nourished by the stream at root and refreshed by the spray, The Lord Grow said in his heart, Here would I dwell for ever, had I but the art to make myself little as an eft. And I would build me an house a span high, beside yonder cushion of moss emerald-hued, with those pink foxgloves to shade my door, which balance their bells above the foaming waters. This shy grass of Parnassus should be my drinking cup, with pure white chalice poised on a hair-thin stem, and the curtains of my bed that little thirsty sandwort which, like a green heaven sown with milk-white stars, curtains the shady sides of these rocks. Resting in this imagination, he abode long time looking on that fairy place, so secretly bestowed in the fold of the naked mountain. Then, unwilling to depart from so fair a spot, and bethinking him besides that after so many hours his horse was weary, he dismounted and lay down beside the stream. And in a short while, having his spirits sublimed with the sweet imagination of those wonders he had beheld, he was fain to suffer the long dark lashes to droop over his large and liquid eyes, and deep sleep overcame him. When he awoke, all the sky was afire with the red of sunset. A shadow was betwixt him and the western light, the shape of one bending over him, and saying in masterful wise, yet in accents wherein the echoes and memories of all sweet sounds seemed mingled and laid up at rest for ever, Lie still, my lord, nor cry not a rescue. Behold thine own sword, and I took it from thee sleeping. And he was ware of a sharp sword pointed against his throat, where the big veins lie beneath the tongue. He stirred not at all, neither spake aught, only looking up at her, as at some vision of delight strayed from the fugitive flock of dreams. The lady said, Where be thy company, and how many? Answer me swiftly. He answered her like a dreamer. How shall I answer thee? How shall I number them that be beyond all count? Or how name unto your grace their habitation, which are even very now closer to me than hand or feet, yet of the next instant are able to transcend a main wilder belike than even a starbeam hath journeyed o'er? She said, Riddle me no riddles. Answer me, thou wert best. Madam, said Grow, these that I told thee of be the company of mine own silent thoughts. And but for mine horse, this is all the company that came hither with me. Alone, said she, and sleep so securely in thine enemy's country? That showed a strange confidence. Not enemies, if I may, said he. But she cried, And thou, Lord Grow, of which land? That one sickened long since, he answered, of a mortal sickness, and 'tis now a day and a night since he is dead thereof. What art thou, then? said she. He answered, If your grace would so receive me, Lord Grow of Demonland. A very practised turncoat, said she. Belike they also are wearied of thee and thy ways. Alas, she said in an altered voice, thy gentle pardon, when doubtless it was for thy generous deeds to me ward they fell out with thee, when thou didst so nobly befriend me. I will tell your highness, answered he, the pure truth. Never stood matters better twixt me and all of them than when yesternight I resolved to leave them. The Lady Mevering was silent, a cloud in her face. Then, I am alone, she said. Therefore think it not little-hearted in me, nor forgetful of past benefits, if I will be further certified of thee ere I suffer thee to rise. Swear to me thou wilt not betray me. But Grow said, How should an oath from me avail thee, madam? Oaths bind not an ill man. Were I minded to do thee wrong, lightly should I swear thee all oaths thou mightest require, and lightly the next instant be forsworn. That is not well said, said Mevrian, nor helpeth not thy safety. You men do say that women's hearts be faint and feeble, but I shall show thee the contrary is in me. Study to satisfy me, else will I assuredly smite thee to death with thine own sword. The Lord Grow lay back, clasping his slender hands behind his head. Stand, I pray thee, said he, o' the other side of me, that I may see thy face. She did so, still threatening him with the sword. And he said, smiling, Divine lady, all my days have I had danger for my bedfellow, and peril of death for my familiar friend. Whilom leading a delicate life in princely court, where murder sitteth in the wine-cup and in the alcove. Whilom journeying alone in more perilous lands than this, as witness the Maruna, where the country is full of venomous beasts and crawling poisoned serpents, and the divils be as abundant there as grasshoppers on a hot hillside in summer. He that feareth is a slave, were he never so rich, were he never so powerful, but he that is without fear is king of all the world. Thou hast my sword. Strike. Death shall be a sweet rest to me. Thraldom, not death, should terrify me. She paused a while, then said unto him, My lord Groa, thou didst do me once a right great good turn. Surely I may build my safety on this, that never yet did kite bring forth a good flying hawk. She shifted her hold on his sword, and very prettily gave it him hilt foremost, saying, I give it thee back, my lord, nothing doubting that that which was given in honour thou wilt honourably use. But he, rising up, said, Madam, this and thy noble words hath given such roof-fastness to the pact of faith betwixt us, that it may now unfold what blossom of oaths thou will. For oaths are the blossom of friendship, not the root, and thou shalt find me a true holder of my vowed amity unto thee without spot or wrinkle. For sundry nights and days abode Groa and Mevrian in that place, hunting at whiles to get their sustenance, drinking of the sweet spring water, sleeping o' nights, she in her cave beneath the holly bushes and the rowans beside the waterfall, he in a cleft of the rocks a little below in the gully, where the moss made cushions soft and resilient as the great stuffed beds in Carsey. In those days she told him of her faring since that night of April when she escaped out of Crothering, how first she found harbourage at Bye in Westmark, but hearing in a day or two of a hue and cry, fled east again, and sojourning a while beside Throwater, came at length about a month ago upon this cave beside the little fountain, and here abode. Her mind had been to win over the mountains to Galing, but she had after the first attempt given over that design, for fear of companies of the enemy, whose hands she barely escaped when she came forth into the lower valleys that open on the eastern coastlands. So she had turned again to this hiding place in the hills, as secret and remote as any in Demonland. For this dale, she let him know, was Neverdale, where no road ran save the way of the deer and the mountain goats, and no garth opened on that dale, and the reek of no man's hearthstone burdened the winds that blew thither. And that gable-crested peak at the head of the dale was the southernmost of the forks of Nantragarnan, nursery of the vulture and the eagle. And a hidden way was round the right shoulder of that peak, over the toothed ridge by Neverdale Halls, to the upper waters of Tiveronderdale. On an afternoon of sultry summer heat it so befell that they rested below the halls, on a bastion of rock that jutted from the southwestern slope. Beneath their feet precipices fell suddenly away from a giddy verge, sweeping round in a grand cirque, above which the mountain rose like some Tartarian fortress, ponderous, cruel as the sea, and sad, scarred and gashed with great lines of cleavage, as though the face of the mountain had been slashed away by the axe-stroke of a giant. In the depths the waters of Dual Tarn slept placid and fathomless. Groa was stretched on the brink of the cliff, face downward, propped on his 2 elbows, studying those dark waters. Surely, he said, the great mountains of the world are a present remedy, if men did but know it, against our modern discontent and ambitions. In the hills is wisdom's fount. They are deep in time. They know the ways of the sun and the wind, the lightning's fiery feet, the frost that shattereth, the rain that shroudeth, the snow that putteth about their nakedness a softer coverlet than fine lawn, which if their large philosophy question not if it be a bridal sheet or a shroud, hath not this unpoliced calm his justification ever in the returning year? And is it not an instance to laugh our carefulness out of fashion? Of us, little children of the dust, children of a day, who with so many burdens do burden us, with taking thought, and with fears, and with desires, and devious schemings of the mind, so that we wax old before our time, and fall weary ere the brief day be spent, and one reaping hook gather us home at last for all our pains. He looked up, and she met the gaze of his great eyes. Deep pools of night they seemed, where strange matters might move unseen, disturbing to look on, yet filled with a soft slumbrous charm that lulled and soothed. "Thou'st fallen a-dreaming, my lord," said Mevrian, "and for me 'tis a hard thing to walk with thee in thy dreams, who am awake in the broad daylight, and would be a-doing." "Certes it is an ill thing," said Lord Groa, "that thou, who hast not been nourished in mendacity or poverty, but in superfluity of honour and largesse, shouldst be made fugitive in thine own dominions, to lodge with foxes and beasts of the wild mountain." Said she, "It is yet a sweeter lodging than is today in Crothering. It is therefore I chafe to do somewhat. To win through to Galing, that were something." "What profit is in Galing," said Groa, "without Lord Juss?" She answered, "Thou wilt tell me it is even as Crothering without my brother." Looking sidelong up at her, where she sat armed beside him, he beheld a tear a-tremble on her eyelid. He said gently, "Who shall foreknow the ways of fate? Your Highness is better here, belike." Lady Mevrian stood up. She pointed to a print in the living rock before her feet. "The hippogriff's hoof-mark," she cried, "stricken in the rock ages ago by that high bird, which presideth from of old over the predestined glory of our line, to point us on to a fame advanced above the region of the glittering stars. True is the word that that land which is in the governance of a woman only is not surely kept. I will abide idly here no more." Gro, beholding her so stand, all armed on that high brink of crag, setting with so much perfection, in womanly beauty manlike valour, bethought him that here was that true embodiment of morn and eve, that charm which called him from Crothering, and for which the prophetic spirits of mountain and wood and field had pointed his path with a heavenly benison, meaning to bid him go northward to his heart's true home. He kneeled down, and caught her hand in his, embracing and kissing it, as of her in whom all his hopes were placed, and saying passionately, "Mevrian, Mevrian, let me be but armed in thy good grace, and I defy whatever there is or can be against me. Even as the sun lighteth broad heaven at noonday, and that giveth light unto this dreary earth, so art thou the true light of Demonland, which because of thee maketh the whole world glorious. Welcome unto me be all miseries, so only unto thee I may be welcome." She sprang back, snatching away her hand. Her sword leapt singing from the scabbard. But Gro, that was so ravished and abused that he remembered of nothing worldly, but only that he beheld his lady's face, abode motionless. She cried, "Back to back! Swift, or 'tis too late!" He leaped up, barely in time. 6 stout fellows, soldiers of Witchland stolen softly upon them at unawares, closed now upon them. No breath to waste in parley, but the clank of steel. He and Mevrian back to back on a table of rock, those 6 setting on from either side. "Kill the goblin," said they. "Take the lady unhurt. 'Tis death to all if she be touched." So for a time those 2 defended them of all their power. Yet at such odds could not the issue stand long in doubt, nor Gro's high mettle make up what he lacked of strength bodily and skill in arms. Cunning of fence indeed was the Lady Mevrian, as they guessed not, to their hurt. For the first of them, a great chuff-headed fellow that sought to bear her down, with rushing in upon her, she with a deft thrust passing his guard ran clear through the throat, by whose taking off his fellows took some lesson of caution. But Gro being at length brought to earth with many wounds, they had the next instant caught Mevrian from behind, whilst others engaged her in the face, when, in the nick of time as by the intervention of heaven, was all their business taken in reverse, and all 5 in a moment laid bleeding on the stones beside their fellows. Mevrian, looking about, and seeing what she saw, fell weak and faint in her brother's arms, overcome with so much radiant joy after that stress of action and peril, beholding now with her own eyes that homecoming whereof the genii of the land had had foreknowledge, and in Gro's sight shown themselves wild with joy thereof. Brandok-Dahar and Juss come home to Demonland, like men arisen from the dead. "Not touched," she answered them, "but look to my lord Gro. I fear he be hurt. Look to him well, for he hath approved him our friend indeed." End of chapter 25. Chapter 26 of The Worm Ouroboros. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jason Mills. The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Edisson. Chapter 26. The Battle of Crothering Side. How word was brought unto the Lord Corineus that the Lords Juss and Brandok-Dahar were come again into the land, and how he resolved to give them battle on the side under Erngate End, and of the great flank march of Lord Brandok-Dahar over the mountains from Transdale, and of the great battle, and of the issue thereof. Laxus and those sons of Corund walked on an afternoon in Crothering Home Mead. The sky above them was hot and coloured of lead, presaging thunder. No wind stirred in the trees that were livid green against that leaden pall. The noise of mattock and crowbar came without intermission from the castle. Where gardens had been, and arbours of shade and sweetness, was now but wreck, broken columns and smashed porphyry vases of rare workmanship, mounds of earth and rotting vegetation. And those great cedars, emblems of their lord's estate and pride, lay prostrate now with their roots exposed, a tangle of sere foliage and branches broken, withered and lifeless. Over this deathbed of ruined loveliness, the towers of onyx showed ghastly against the sky. "Is there not a virtue in 7?" said Cargo. Last week was the 6th time we thought we had gotten the eel by the tail in yon fly-blown hills of Meland, and came empty home. When think'st, Laxus, shall's run 'em to earth indeed? When egg-pies shall grow on apple-trees, answered Laxus. Nay, the general setteth greater store by his proclamations concerning the young woman, who likely never heareth of them, and assuredly will not be by them ticed home again, and by these toys of revenge, than by sound soldiership. Hark, there goeth this day's work. They turned at a shout from the gates, to behold the northern of those 2 golden hippogriffs totter and crash down the steeps into the moat, sending up a great smoke from the stones and rubble which poured in its wake. Lord Laxus's brow was dark. He laid hand on Hemming's arm, saying, The times need all sage counsel we can reach unto, O ye sons of Corund, if our lord the king shall have indeed from this expedition into Demonland the victory at last of all his evil willers. Remember, that was a great miss to our strength when the goblin went. Out upon the viper, said Cargo. Corinius was right in this, not to warrant him the honesty of such slippery cattle. He had not served above a month or 2 but that he ran to the enemy. Corinius, said Laxus, is yet but green in his estate. Doth he suppose the rest of his reign shall be but play and the enjoying of a kingdom? Those left-handed strokes of fortune may yet o'erthrow him, the while that he streameth out his youth in wine and venery, and manageth this private spite against this lady. Slipper youth must be underpropped with elder counsel, lest all go amiss. A most reverend old counsellor art thou, said Cargo, of 36 years of age. Said Hemming, We be 3. Take command thyself. I and my brother will back thee. I will that thou swallow back those words, said Laxus, as though they had never been spoke. Remember Corsus and Galandus. Besides, albeit he seemeth now rather to be a man straught than one that hath his wits, yet is Corinius in his sober self a valiant and puissant soldier, a politic and provident captain as is not found besides in Demonland, no, nor in which land neither, an it were not your noble father, and this one in his youthly age. That is true, said Hemming. Thou hast justly reproved me. Now while they were a-talking came one from the castle, and made obeisance unto Laxus, saying, You are inquired for, O king, so please you to walk into the north chamber. Said Laxus, Is it he that was newly ridden from the east country? So it is, so please you, with a low leg he made answer. Hath he not had audience with King Corinius? He hath sought audience, said the man, but was denied. The matter presseth, and he urged me therefore seek unto your lordship. As they walked toward the castle, Hemming said in Laxus's ear, Knowest thou not this brave new piece of court ceremony? O these days, when he hath stroyed an hostage to spite the Lady Mevrian, as today was stroyed the horse-headed eagle, he giveth not audience till sundown. For, the deed of vengeance done, retireth himself to his own chamber, and a wench with him, the daintiest and gamesomest he may procure, and so for 2 hours or 3, drowned in the main sea of his own pleasures, he abateth some little deal for a season the pang of love. Now when Laxus was come forth from talking with the messenger from the east, he fared without delay to Corinius's chamber. There, thrusting aside the guards, he flung wide the shining doors, and found the Lord Corinius merrily disposed. He was reclined on a couch deep cushioned with dark green 3-pile velvet. An ivory table inlaid with silver and ebony stood at his elbow, bearing a crystal flagon already 2 parts emptied of the foaming wine, and a fair gold goblet beside it. He wore a long loose sleeveless gown of white silk, edged with a gold fringe. This, fallen open at the neck, left naked his chest and one strong arm, that in that moment when Laxus entered, reached out to grasp the wine-cup. Upon his knee he held a damosel of some 17 years, fair and fresh as a rose, with whom he was plainly on the point to pass from friendly converse to amorous privacy. He looked angrily upon Laxus, who without ceremony spoke and said, The whole east is in a tumult. The burg is forced which we built astride the stile. Spitfire hath passed into Breakingdale to victual Galing, and hath overthrown our army that sat in siege thereof. Corinius drank a draught and spat. Foot, said he, much brute little fruit. I would know by what warrant thou troublest me with this tittle-tattle, and I pleasantly disposing myself to mirth and recreation. Could it not wait till supper-time? Ere Laxus might say more, was a great clatter heard without on the stairs, and in came those sons of Corund. Am I a king, said Corinius, gathering his robe about him, and shall I be forced? Avoid the chamber. Then, marking them stand silent with disordered looks, What's the matter? He said. Are ye ta'en with the swindle or the turn-sickness, or are ye out of your wits? Hemming answered and said, Not mad, my lord. Here's Diderus that held the Stylberg for us, ridden from the east as fast as his horse might wallop, and gotten here hard at the heels of the former messenger, with fresh and more certain advertisement, fresher by 4 days than that one's. I pray you hear him. I'll hear him, said Corineus, at supper time. Naught sooner, if the roof were afire. The land beneath thy feet's afire, cried Hemming. Juss and Brandok de Ha home again, and half the country lost thee ere thou heardst on't. These devils are home again. Shall we hear that and still be swillballs? Corineus listened with folded arms. His great jaw was lifted up. His nostrils widened. For a minute he abode in silence, his cold blue eyes fixed as it were on somewhat afar. Then, Home again, said he, and the east in a hubbub, and not unlikely. Thank Diderus for his tidings. He shall sweeten mine ears with some more at supper. Till then, leave me, unless ye mean to be stretched. But Laxus, with sad and serious brow, stood beside him and said, My lord, forget not that you are here the vicar and legate of the king. Let the crown upon your head put perils in your thoughts, so as you may hearken peaceably to them that are willing to lesson you with sound and sage advice. If we take order tonight to march by Switchwater, we may very well shut back this danger and stifle it ere it wax to too much bigness. If, on the contrary, we suffer them to enter into these western parts, like enough without let or stay they will overrun the whole country. Corineus rolled his eye upon him. Can nothing, he said, prescribe unto thee obedience? Look to thine own charge. Is the fleet in proper trim? For there's the strength, ease, and anchor of our power, whether for victualling, or to shift our weight against 'em which way we choose, or to give us sure asylum if it were come to that. What ails thee? Have we not these 4 months desired naught better than that these demons should take heart to strike a field with us? If it be true that Juss himself and Brandok de Ha have thrown down the castles and strengths which I had i' the east, and move with an army against us, why then I have them in the forge already, and shall now bring them to the hammer. And be satisfied, I'll choose mine own ground to fight them. There's yet matter for haste in this, said Laxus. A day's march, and we oppose them not, will bring them before Crothering. That, answered Corineus, jumpeth pat with mine own design. I'll not go a league to bar their way, but receive 'em here where the ground lieth most favourable to meet an enemy, which advantage I'll employ to the greatest stretch of service, standing on Crothering side, resting my flank against the mountain. The fleet shall ride in Orworth haven. Laxus stroked his beard and was silent a minute, considering this. Then he looked up and said, This is sound generalship, I may not gainsay it. It is a purpose, my lord, said Corineus, I have long had in myself, stored by for the event. Let me alone, therefore, to do that my right is. There's this good in it too, as it befalleth, 'twill suffer that dive dapper to behold his home again afore I kill him. I shall find it a sight for sore eyes, I think, after my tending on't. The 3rd day after these doings, the farmer at Holt stood in his porch that opened westward on Tiveranderdale. An old man was he, crooked like a mountain thorn, but a bright black eye he had, and the hair curled crisp yet above his brow. It was late afternoon, and the sky overcast. Tousle-haired sheep-dogs slept before the door. Swallows gathered in the sky. Near to him sat a damosel, dainty as a meadow pipit, lithe as an antelope, and she was grinding grain in a hand-mill, singing the while. Grind, mill, grind, Corineus grinds us all, kinging it in widowed Crothering. The old man was furbishing a shield and morion cap, and other tackle of war lay at his feet. I wonder thou wilt still be busy with thy tackle, O my father, said she, looking up from her singing and grinding. If ill-tide ill again, what should an old man do but grieve and be silent? There shall be time for that hereafter, said the old man, but a little while is hand fain of blow. They'll be for firing the roof-tree likely if they come back, said she, still grinding. Thou'rt a disobedient lass. If thou'dst but flit as I bade thee to the shield-house up the dale, I'd force not a bean for their burnings. Let it burn, said she, if he be taken. What availeth then for thee or for me to be a-tarrying, thou that art an old man and full of good days, and I that will not be left so? A great dog awoke beside her and shook himself, then drew near and laid his nose in her lap, looking up at her with kind, solemn eyes. The old man said, Thou art a disobedient lass, and but for thee, come sword, come fire, not a straw care I. knowing it shall be but a passing storm, now that my lord is home again. They took the land from Lord Spitfire, said she. Ay, hinny, said the old man, and thou shalt see my lord shall take it back again. Ay, said she, and still she ground, and still she sang. Grind, mill, grind. Corineus grinds us all. After a time, Hist, said the old man, was not that a horse tread i' the lane? Get thee within doors till I know if all be friendly. And he stooped painfully to take up his weapon. Woefully it shook in his feeble hand. But she, as one that knew the step, heeding naught else, leapt up with face first red, then pale, then flushed again, and ran to the gate of the garth, and the sheep-dogs bounded before her. There in the gate she was met with a young man riding a weary horse. He was garbed like a soldier, and horse and man were so bedraggled with mire and dust and all manner of defilement they were a sorry sight to see, and so jaded both that scarce it seemed they had might to journey another furlong. They halted within the gate, and all those dogs jumped up upon them, whining and barking for joy. Ere the soldier was well down from the saddle he had a sweet armful. Softly, my heart, said he, my shoulder's somewhat raw. Nay, 'tis naught to speak on. I've brought thee all my limbs home. Was there a battle? Said the old man. Was there a battle, father? Cried he. I'll tell thee, Crotheringside is thicker with dead men slain than our garth with sheep i' the shearing time. Alack and alack, 'tis a most horrid wound, dear, said the girl. Go in and I'll wash it, and lay to it milfoil pounded with honey. 'Tis most sovereign against pain and loss of blood, and drieth up the lips of the wound, and maketh whole thou'dst no credit how soon. Thou hast bled overmuch, thou foolish one, and how couldst thou thrive without thy wife to tend thee? The farmer put an arm about him, saying, Was the field ours, lad? I'll tell you all orderly, old man, answered he, but I must stable him first. And the horse nuzzled his breast. And ye must ballast me first. God shield us, 'tis not a tale for an empty man to tell. Lass, father, said the damosel, have we not one sweet sippet i' the mouth, that we hold him here once more? And sweet or sour, let him take his time to fetch us the next. So they washed his hurt, and laid kindly herbs thereto, and bound it with clean linen, and put fresh raiment upon him, and made him sit on the bench without the porch, and gave him to eat and drink, cakes of barley meal, and dark heather honey, and rough white wine of Tiveranderdale. The dogs lay close about him, as if there was warmth there, and safety whereas he was. His young wife held his hand in hers, as if that were enough if it should last for aye. And that old man, eating down his impatience like a schoolboy chafing for the bell, fingered his partisan with trembling hand. Thou hadst the word I sent thee, father, after the fight below Galing? Ay, 'twas good. There was a council held that night, said the soldier, all the great men together in the high hall in Galing, so as it was a heaven to see. I was one of their cup-bearers, 'cause I'd killed the standard-bearer of the witches in that same battle below Galing. Methought 'twas no great thing I did, till after the battle, look you, my lord's self standing beside me, and saith he, Arnaud, ay, by my name, father, Arnaud, saith, thou'st done down the pennon o' Witchland that gainst our freedom streamed so proud. 'Tis thy like shall best stead Demonland i' these dog days, saith he. Bear my cup to-night for thine honour. I would, lass, thou'd seen his eyes that tide. 'Tis a lord to put marrow in the sword-arm, our lord. They had forth the great map of the world, of this Demonland, to study their business. I was by, pouring the wine, and I heard their disputations. 'Tis a wondrous map, wrought in crystal and bronze, most artificial, with waters a-glistening and mountains standing substantial to the touch. My lord points with sword. Here, saith, standeth Corineus, by all sure tellings, and budgeth not from Crothering. And by the gods, saith, 'tis a wise disposition. For mark, if we go by Gashtondale, as go we must to come at him, he striketh down on us as hammer on anvil. And if we will pass by toward the head of Thunderfirth, and here appointeth it out with sword, down cometh on our flank, and every gate the land's slope serveth his turn and fighteth against us. I mind me of those words, said the young man, 'cause my lord Brandok de Har laughed and said, Are we grown so strange by our travels, our own land fighteth of the opposite party? Let me study it again. I filled his cup. Dear gods, but I'd fill him a bowl of mine own heart's blood if he required it of me, after our times together, father. But more of that anon. The stoutest gentleman, and captain without peer. But Lord Spitfire, that was this while vaulting up and down the chamber, cried out and said, "'Twere folly to travel his road prepared us. Take him of that side he looketh least to see us, south through the mountains, and upon him in his rear up from Morderdale." "Ah," saith my lord, "and be pressed back into Mirkdale Hags if we miss of our first spring. 'Tis too perilous. 'Tis worse than Gashtondale." So went it, a nay for every yea, and naught to please 'em, till i' the end my lord Brandok Dahar, that had been long time busy with the map, said, "Now that you have threshed the whole stack and found not the needle, I will show you my rede, 'cause ye shall not say I counselled you rashly." So they bade him say his rede, and he said unto my lord, "Thou and our main power shall go by Switchwater way, and let the whole land's face blaze your coming before you. Ye shall lie tomorrow night in some good fighting stead, whither it shall not be to his vantage to move against you, haply in the old Shearlings above Renthwaite, or at any likely spot afore the road dippeth south into Gashtondale. But at point of day strike camp and go by Gashtondale, and so up onto the side to do battle with him. So shall all fall out even as his own hopes and expectations do desire it. But I, saith my lord Brandok Dahar, with 700 chosen horse, will have fared by then clean along the mountain ridge from Transdale even to Erngate End, so as when he turneth all his battle northward down the side to whelm you, there shall hang above the security of his flank and rear that which he ne'er dreamed on. If he support my charging of his flank at unawares, with you in front to cope him, and he with so small an advantage upon us in strength of men, if he stand that, why then good night, the witches are our masters in arms, and we may off cap to 'em and strive no more to right us. So said my lord Brandok Dahar, but all called him daft to think on't. Carry an army o' horseback in so small time cross such cursed ground? It might not be. Well, quoth he, sith you count it not possible, so much the more shall he. Cautious counsels never will serve us this tide. Give me but my pick of man and horse to the number of 700, and I'll so set this mask you shall not desire a better master of the revels. So i' the end he had his way, and past midnight they were at it, I wist, planning and studying. At dawn was the whole army marshalled in the meadows below Moonmere, and my lord spake among them, and told us he was minded to march into the west country and exterminate the witches out of Demonland. And he bade any man that deemed he had now had his fill of furious war, and deemed it a sweeter thing to go home to his own place, say forth his mind without fear, and he would let him go, yea, and give him good gifts thereto, seeing that all had done manful service. But he would have no man in this enterprise who went not to it with his whole heart and mind. The damosel said, I wish there was not a man would take that offer. There went up, said the soldier, such a shout, with such a stamping, and such a clashing together of weapons, the land shook with't, and the echoes rolled in the high corries of the scarf like thunder, of them shouting, Crothering, Juss, Brandok Dahar, lead us to Crothering. Without more ado was the stuff packed up, and ere noon was the whole army gotten over the stile. While we halted for daymeal hard by Blackwood in a Morderdale, came my lord Brandok Dahar a-riding among the ranks, for to take his pick of 700 of our ablest horse. Nor would commit this to his officer, but himself called on each lad by name whenso he saw a likely one, and speared would a-ride with him. I trow he gat never a near to that spearing. My heart was a-cold lest he'd o'erlook me, watching him ride by as jaunty as a king. But a reined in's horse, and saith, Arnod, 'tis a bonny horse thou ridest. Could he carry thee to a swine hunt down from Erngate End i' the morning? I saluted him and said, Not so far only, lord, but to burning hell, so thou but lead us. Come on, saith he, 'tis a better gate I shall lead thee, to Crothering Hall ere eventide. So now was our strength sundered, and the main army made ready to march westward down Switchwater way, with the Lord Zig to lead the horse, and the Lord Vol and my lord's self and his brother the Lord Spitfire faring in the midst amongst them all, and with them yonder outland traitor, Lord Grow, but I do think him more a stick of sugar paste than a man of war. And many gentlemen of worth went with them, Gismore Gleam of Justdale, Astor of Rattray, and Bremery of Shawls, and many more men of mark. But there abode with my lord Brandok Dahar, Arnund of Bye, and Thormrod of Carnarvie, Camarera Strappardon, Emmeron Galt, Hesper Galthring of Elmestead, Sturkmere of Blackwood, Melchor of Strufe, Quaz's 3 sons from Dalney, and Stipmere of Fales. Fierce and choleric young gentlemen, after his own heart, methinks. Great horsemen, not very forecasting of future things afar off, but entertainers of fortune by the day. Too rash to govern an army, but best of all to obey and follow him in so glorious an enterprise. Ere we parted, came my lord to speak with my lord Brandok Dahar. And my lord looked into the lift that was all dark cloud and wind, and quoth he, Fail not at the tryst, cousin. 'Tis thy word that thou and I be finger and thumb, and never more surely than tomorrow shall this be seen. O friend of my heart, content thee, answereth my lord Brandok Didst ever know me neglect my guests? And have I not bidden you to breakfast with me tomorrow morn in Crothering Meads? Now we of the 700 turned leftward at the water's meet, up Transdale into the mountains, and now came ill weather upon us, the worst that ever I knew. 'Tis softy now and little roady now in Transdale, as thou knowest, father, and weary work it was with every deer track turned a watercourse, and under foot all slush and mire, and naught for a man to see save white mist and rain above and about him, and soppy bent and water under's horse hoofs. Little there was to tell us we were won at last to the top of the pass, and 'twere not the cloud blew thicker and the wind wilder about us. Every man was wet to the breech, and bare a pint of water in's 2 shoes. Whiles we were halted on the saddle, my lord Brandok rested not at all, but gave his horse to his man to hold, and himself fared back and forth among us. And for every man he had a jest or a merry look, so as 'twas meat and drink but to hear or to behold him. But a little while only would he suffer us to halt. Then right we turned up along the ridge, where the way was yet worse than in the dale had been, with rocks and pits hidden in the heather, and slithery slabs of granite. By my faith, I think no horse that was not born and bred to it might cross such country, wet or fine. He should be foundered, or should break his legs and his rider's neck ere he should be gotten 2 hours' journey along those ridges. But we that rode with my lord Brandok to Crothering side were 10 hours riding so, besides our halts to water our horses, and longer halts to feed 'em, and the last part of the way through murk night, and all the way the wind's teeth, with rain blown on the wind like spray, and hail at whiles. And when the rain was done, the wind veered to the northwest and blew the ridges dry, and then the little bits of rotten granite blew in our faces like hailstones on the wind. There was no shelter, not of the lee side of the rocks, but everywhere the storm wind baffled and buffeted us, and clapped his wings among the crags like thunder. Dear heaven, weary we were, and like to drop, cold to the marrow, nigh blinded, man and horse, yet with a dreadful industry pressed on. And my lord Brandok was now in the van, now in the rearguard, cheering men's hearts who marked with what blithe countenance himself did suffer the same hardships as his meanest trooper, like to one riding at ease to some great wedding feast, crying, What, lads, merrily on! These fen toads of the Druima shall learn too late what way our mountain ponies do go like stags up on the mountain. When it began to be morning, we came to our last halt, and there was our 700 horse hid in the corrie under the tall cliffs of Erngate End. I warrant you we went carefully about it, so as no prying swine of Witchland looking up from below should espy a glimpse of man or horse of the skyline. His Highness first set his sentinels, and let call the muster, and so that every man had his morning meal, and every horse his feed. Then he took his stand behind a crag of rock whence he could overlook the land below. He had me by him to do his errands. In the first light we looked down westward over the mountain's edge, and saw Crothering and the arms of the sea, not so dark but we might behold their fleet at anchor in Orwath roads, and their camp like a batch of beehives, so as a man might think to cast a stone into it below us. That was the first time I'd e'er gone to the wars with him. Faith, he's a pretty man to see. Leaned forward there on the heather, with chin on his folded arms, his helm laid aside so they should not see it glint from below. Quiet like a cat. Half asleep, you'd say. But his eyes were awake, looking down on Crothering. 'Twas well seen even from so far away how vilely they had used it. The great red sun leaped out of the eastern cloud banks. A stir began in their camp below. Standards set up, men gathering thereto, ranks forming, bugles sounding. Then a score of horse galloping up the road from Gashtondale into the camp. His Highness, without turning his head, beckoned with his hand to me to call his captains. I ran and fetched 'em. He gave 'em swift commands, pointing down where the Witchland swine rolled out their battle, thieves and pirates who robbed his Highness' subjects within his streams, with standard and pennons and glittering naked spears moving northward from the tents. Then in the quiet came a sound made a man's heart leap within him. Faint out of the far hollows of Gashtondale, the trumpet of my Lord Juss's battle call. My Lord Brandok paused a minute, looking down. Then turned him about with face that shone like the morning. Fair lords, saith, now lightly on horseback, for Juss fighteth against his enemies. I think he was well content. I think he was sure he would that day get his heart's sith of every one that had wronged him. That was a long ride down from Erngate End. With all our heart's blood drumming us to haste, we must yet go warily, picking our way that tricky ground, steep as a roof slope, uneven and with no sure foothold, with sykes in wet moss and rocks outcropping and shifting screes. There was naught but leave it to the horses, and bravely they brought us down the steeps. We were not halfway down ere we heard and saw how battle was joined. So intent were the Witchlanders on my lord's main army, I think we were off the steep ground and forming for the charge ere they were ware of us. Our trumpeters sounded his battle challenge, "Who meddles wi' Brandock de Ha?" and we came down onto Crothering side like a rock fall. I scarce know what way the battle went, father. 'Twas like a meeting of streams in spate. I think they opened to us right and left to ease the shock. They that were before us went down like standing corn under a hailstorm. We wheeled both ways, some gainst their right that was thrown back toward the camp, the more part with my Lord Brandock de Ha to our own right. I was with these in the main battle. His Highness rode a hot, stirring horse, very fierce and dogged. Knee to knee with him went Stirkmere of Blackwood o' the one side, and Thornrod o' the other. Neither man nor horse might stand up before 'em, and they faring as in a maze, now this way, now that, amid the thrumbling and thrusting of the footmen, heads and arms smitten off, men hewn in sunder from crown to belly, aye, to the saddle, riderless horses maddened, blood splashed up from the ground like the slush from a marsh. So for a time, till we had spent the vantage of our onset, and felt for the first time the weight of their strength. For Corineus, as it appeareth, was now himself ridden from the vanward, where he had beat back for a time our main army, and set on against my Lord Brandock de Ha with horsemen and spearmen, and commanded his sling-casters besides to let freely at us and drive us toward the camp. And now in the great swing of battle were we carried back to the camp again. And there was a sweet devil's holiday. Horses and men tripping over tent ropes, tents torn down, crashes of broken crockery, and King Laxus come thither with sailors from the fleet, hamstringing our horses, while Corineus charged us from the north and east. That Corineus beareth him in battle more like a devil from hell than a mortal man. In the first 2 strokes of the sword he overthrew 2 of our best captains, Romanord of Dolney and Emmer Galt. Stirkmere, that stood in his way to stop him, are flung down with spear, horse and man. They say he met twice with my Lord Brandock de Ha that day, but each time were they parted in the press, ere they might rightly square together. I have stood in some goodly battles, father, as well thou knowest. First following my lord and my Lord Guldry Blusco in foreign parts, and last year in the great rout at Crosby Outsykes, and again with my Lord Spitfire when he smote the witches on Bremer Rapes, and in the murthering great battle under Thremne's Herch. But never was I in fight like to this of yesterday. Never saw I such feats of arms. As witness Cameror of Straparden, who with a great 2-handed sword hewed off his enemy's leg close to the hip, so huge a blow the blade sheared through leg and saddle and horse and all. And Stirkmere of Blackwood, rising like a devil out of a heap of slain men. And tho's helm was lossen, and was bleeding from 3 or 4 great wounds, held off a dozen of the witches with deadly thrusts and sword strokes, till they had enough, and gave back before him, 12 before 1, and he given over for dead a while before. But all great deeds seemed trash beside the deeds of my Lord Brandock de Ha. In one short while had he 3 times a horse slain stark dead under him, yet gat never a wound himself, which was a marvel. For without care he rode through and about, smiting down their champions. I mind me of him once, with his horse ripped and killed under him, and one of those Witchland lords that tilted at him on the ground as he leapt to his feet again, how caught the spear with 2 hands, and by main strength yerked his enemy out of the saddle. Prince Cargo it was, youngest of Corran's sons. Long may the Witchland ladies strain their dear eyes, they'll ne'er see yon Hendy lad come sailing home again. His Highness swapped him such a swipe of the neckbone as he pitched to earth, the head of him flew i' the air like a tennis ball. And in the twinkling of an eye was my Lord Brandock de Ha horsed again on's enemy's horse, and turned to charge him anew. You'd say his arm must fail at last for weariness, of a man so lithe and jimp to look on. Yet I think his last stroke i' that battle was not lighter than the first, and stones and spears and sword strokes seemed to come upon him with no more impression than blows with a straw would give to an adamant. I know not how long was that fight among the tents, only 'twas the best fight I ever was at, and the bloodiest. And by all tellings 'twas as great work of the other part, where my lord and his folk fought their way up onto the side. But of that we knew nothing. Yet certain it is we had all been dead men had my lord not there prevailed, as certain 'tis he had never so prevailed but for our charging of their flank when they first advanced against him. But in that last hour all we that fought among the tents thought each man only of this, how he might slay yet one more witch, and yet again one more, afore he should die. For Corineus in that hour put forth his might to crush us, and for every enemy there fell to earth, 2 more seemed to be raised up against us. And our own folk fell fast, and the tents that were so white were one gore of blood. When I was a little tiny boy, father, we had a sport, swimming in the deep pools of Tiveranda water, that one boy would catch t'other and hold him under, till he could no more for want of breath. Methinks there's no longing i' the world so sore as the longing for air, when he that is stronger than thou grippeth thee still under the water, nor no gladness i' the world like the bonny sweet air i' thy lungs again, when it letteth thee shoot up to the free daylight. 'Twas right so with us, who had now said adieu to hope, and saw all lost save life itself, and that not like to tarry long, when we heard suddenly the thunder of my lord's trumpet sounding to the charge, and ere our startled wits might rightly think what that portended, was the whole surging battle whipped and scattered like the water of a lake caught up in a white squall, and that massed strength of the enemy, which had invested us round with so great a stream of shot and steel, reeled first forward, then backward, then forward again upon us, confounded in a vast confusion. I trow new strength came to our arms. I trow our swords opened their mouths. For northward we beheld the ensign of Gaeling, streaming like a blazing star, and my lord's self in a moment high advanced above the rout, and Zig and Astar, and hundreds of our horse, hewing their way towards us, whilst we hewed towards them. And now was reaping time for us, and time of payment for all those weary, bloody hours we had held on to life with our teeth among the tents on Crothering side, while they o' the other part, my lord and his, had with all the odds of the ground against them, painfully and yard by yard, fought out the fight to victory. And now, ere we well wist of it, the day was won, and the victory ours, and the enemy broken, and put to so great a rout as hath not been seen by living man. That false king Corineus, after he had tarried to see the end of the battle, fled with a few of his men out of the great slaughter, and as it later appeared gat him a shipboard in Orwath harbour, and with 3 ships or 4 escaped to sea, but the most of their fleet was burned there in the harbour to save it from our hands. My lord gave command to take up the wounded and tend them, friend and foe alike. Among them was King Laxus ta'en up, stunned with a mace blow or some such. So they brought him before the lords, where they rested a little way down the side above the home meads of Crothering. He looked 'em all in the eye, most proud and soldier-like. Then a saith unto my lord, It may be pain, but no shame to us, to be vanquished after so equal and so great a fight. Herein only do I blame my ill luck, that it denied me fall in battle. Thou mayst now, O Jus, strike off my head for the treason I wrote you 3 years ago, and since I know thee of a courteous and noble nature, I'll not scorn to ask of thee this courtesy, not to tarry, but take it now. My lord stood there like a war-horse after a breather. He took him by the hand. O Laxus, saith he, I give thee not thy head only, but thy sword, and here I gave it him, hilt foremost. For thy dealings with us in the battle of Cartadza, let time that hath an art to make dust of all things so do with the memory of these. Since then thou hast shown thyself still our noble enemy, and so shall we account thee still. Therewith my lord commanded bring Laxus down to the sea, and ship him aboard of a boat, for Corineus still held off the land with his ships, waiting no doubt to see if he or any other of his folk could yet be saved. But as King Laxus was upon parting, my lord Brandok de Har, speaking with great show of carelessness, as of some trifling matter I had by chance called to mind, My lord, saith he, I ne'er ask favour of any man. Only in a manner of return of courtesies, methought thou mightest be willing to bear my salutations to Corineus, sith I've no other messenger. Laxus answereth he would freely do it. Then saith his highness, Say to him, I will not blame him that he abode us not i' the field after the battle was lost, for that had been a simple part, flatly against all maxims of right soldiership, and but to cast his life away. But freakish fortune I blame, that twined us one from the other when we should have dealt together this day. He hath borne him in my halls, I am let to know, more i' the fashion of a swine or a beastly ape than a man. Pray him come ashore ere you sail home, that I and he, with no man else to make betwixt us, may cast up our account. We swear him peace and grith, and a safe conduct back to ships if he prevail against me, or if I so use him that he cry for mercy. If he'll not take this offer, then is he a dastard, and the whole world shall so acclaim him. Sir, saith Laxus, I'll punctually discharge thy message. Whether he did so or no, father, I know not. But if he did, it seemeth it was little to Corineus's liking. For no sooner had his ship ta'en Laxus aboard, Then she hoised sail and put out into the deep, and so goodbye." The young man ceased, and they were all three silent a while. A faint breeze rippled the foliage of the oak woods of Tiveranderdale. The sun was down behind the stately thornbacks, and the whole sky from bourne to bourne was alight with the sunset glory. Dappled clouds, with sky showing here and there between, covered the heavens, save in the west, where a great archway of clear air opened between clouds and earth, air of an azure that seemed to burn, so pure it was, so deep, so charged with warmth, not the harsh blue of noonday, nor the sumptuous deep eastern blue of approaching night, but a bright heavenly blue bordering on green, deep, tender, and delicate as the spirit of evening. Athwart the midst of that window of the west, a blade of cloud, hard-edged and jagged with teeth coloured as of live coals and dead, fiery and iron-dark in turn, stretched like a battered sword. The clouds above the arch were pale rose, the zenith like black opal, dark blue and thunderous grey, dappled with fire. End of chapter 26. Chapter 27 of The Worm Ouroboros. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jason Mills. The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Edisson. Chapter 27. The Second Expedition to Impland. How the Lord Juss, not to be persuaded from his set purpose, found, where least it was to be looked for, upholding in that resolve, and of the sailing of the armament to Muelva by way of the Straits of Melikafkaz. That was the last ember of red summer burning when they cut them that harvest on Crothering side. Autumn came, and winter months, and the lengthening days of the returning year, and with the first breath of spring were the harbours filled with ships of war, so many as had never in former days been seen in the land, and in every countryside from the western isles to Byland, from Shalgroth and Kellialand to the headlands under Rim and Armon, were soldiers gathered with their horses and all instruments of war. Lord Brandoctor rode from the west, the day the pasque flowers first opened on the bluffs below Erngate End, and primroses made sweet the birch forests in Gashtondale. He set forth betimes, and hard he rode, and he rode into Galing by the Lion Gate about the hour of noon. There was Lord Juss in his private chamber, and greeted him with great joy and love. So Brandoctor asked, "What speed?" And Juss answered, 30 ships and 5 afloat in Lookinghaven, whereof all save 4 be dragons of war. Zig I expect tomorrow with the Kellialand levies. Spitfire lieth at Owlswick with 1500 men from the Southlands. Vol came in but 3 hours since with 400 more. In sum I'll have 4000, reckoning ships' companies and our own bodyguards. 8 ships of war have I, said Lord Brandoctor, in Strappard and Firth, all busked and bound. 5 more at Orwath, 5 at Lornegate in Morvay, and 3 on the Mealand coast at Stackray Oise, besides 4 more in the Isles. And I have 1600 spearmen and 600 horse. All these shall come together to join with thine in Lookinghaven at the snapping of my fingers. Give me but 7 days' notice. Just gripped him by the hand. Bare were my back without thee, he said. In Crothering I've shifted not a stone, nor swept not a chamber clean, said Brandoctor. 'Tis a muck-pit. Every man's hand I might command I set only to this, and now 'tis ready. He turned sharp toward Juss and looked at him a minute in silence. Then, with a gravity that sat not often on his lips, he said, Let me be urgent with thee once more. Strike, and delay not. Do him not again that kindness we did him aforetime, fribbling our strength away on the cursed shores of Impland, and by the charmed waters of Ravery, so as he might as secure as sleep send Corsus hither, and Corineus to work havoc i' the land, and so put on us the greatest shame was ever laid on mortal men, and we not bred up to suffer shame. Thou saidst 7 days, said Juss. Snap thy fingers, and call up thy armies. I'll delay thee not an hour. Ay, but I mean to Carsey, said he. To Carsey, whither else? said Juss. But I'll take my brother Gauldry with us. But I mean first to Carsey, said Brandoctor. Let my opinion sway thee once. Why, a schoolboy should tell thee, clear thy flank and rear ere thou go forward. Juss smiled. I love this new garb of caution, cousin, said he. It doth most prettily become thee. I question, though, whether this be not the true cause, that Corineus took not up thy challenge last summer, but let it lie, and that hath left thee hungry still. Brandok de Har looked him sidelong in the eye, and laughed. "O Juss," he said, "thou hast touched me near. But 'tis not that. That was in the weird that bright lady laid on me, in the Sparrowhawk Castle in Impland forlorn, that he I held most in hate should ruin my fair lordship, and that to my hand should vengeance be denied. That I e'en must brook. Oh no, think only, delays are dangerous. Come, be advised, be not mulish." But the Lord Justice's face was grave. "Urge me no more, dear friend," said he. "Thou sleep'st soft. But to me, when I am cast in my first sleep, cometh many a time the likeness of Goldry Blusco, held by a maleficial charm on the mountain-top of Zora Rach, that standeth apart, out of the sunlight, out of all sound or warmth of life. Long ago I made vow to turn neither to the right nor to the left, until I set him free." "He is thy brother," said Lord Brandok de Har. "Also he is mine own familiar friend, whom I love scarce less than thee. But when thou speakest of oaths, remember there's Lafayres too. What shall he think on us after our oath to him 3 years ago, that night in Corsey? Yet this one blow should right him too." "He will understand," said Juss. "He is to come with Gaslark, and thou toldst me thou dost e'en now expect them," said Brandok de Har. "I'll leave you. I cannot for shame say to him, 'Patience, friend, truly it is not today convenient. Thou shalt be paid in time.' By heavens, I'd scorn to entreat my mantle-maker so. And this our friend that lost all and languisheth in exile because he saved our lives." So saying, he stood up in great discontent and ire, as if to leave the chamber. But Juss caught him by the wrist. "Thou dost upbraid me most unjustly, and well thou knowest it in thy heart, and 'tis that makes thee so angry. Hark, the horn soundeth at the gate, and 'tis for Gaslark. I'll not let thee go." "Well," said Brandok de Har, "have thy will. Only ask not me to plead thy rotten case to them. If I speak, it shall be to shame thee. Now thou art warned." Now they went into the high presence chamber, where were bright ladies not a few, and captains and noble persons from up and down the land, and stood on the dais. Gaslark the king walked up the shining floor, and behind him his captains and councillors of Goblinland walked 2 by 2. The Prince Lafayres strode at his elbow, proud as a lion. Blithely they greeted those lords of Demonland that rose up to greet them beneath the starry canopy, and the Lady Mevrian that stood betwixt her brother and Lord Juss, so as 'twere hard to say which of the 3 was fairest to look on, so much they differed in their beauty's glory. Gros, standing near, said in himself, "I know a 4th, and were she but joined with these, then were the crown of the whole earth's loveliness fitted in this one chamber, in a right casket surely, and the gods in heaven, if there be gods indeed, should go pale for envy, having in their starry gallery no fair to match with these, not Phoebus Apollo, not the chaste huntress, nor the foam-born queen herself." But Gaslark, when his eye lighted on the long black beard, the lean figure slightly stooping, the pallid brow, the curls smoothed with perfumed unguents, the sickle-like nose, the great liquid eyes, the lily hand, he, beholding and knowing these of old, waxed in a moment dark as thunder, with the blood rush beneath his sun-browned skin, and with a great sweep snatched out his sword, as if without care or beware to thrust him through. Gros stepped hastily back, but the Lord Juss came between them. "Let alone, Juss," cried Gaslark. "Know'st not this fellow, what a vile enemy and viper we have here? A pretty perfumed villain, who for so many years did spin me a thread of many seditions and troubles, while his smooth tongue gat money from me still. Blessed occasion! Now will I let his soul out." But the Lord Juss laid his hand on Gaslark's sword-arm. "Gaslark," said he, "leave off thy rages, and put up thy sword. A year ago thou'dst done me no wrong, but today thou'dst have slain me a man of mine own men, and a lord of Demonland." Now when they had done their greetings, they washed their hands and sate at dinner, and were nobly served and feasted. And the Lord Juss made peace betwixt Gros and Gaslark, albeit 'twas no light task to prevail upon Gaslark to forgive him. Thereafter they retired them, with Gaslark and Lafayres, into a chamber apart. Gaslark the king spake and said, "None can gainsay it, O Juss, that this fight ye won last harvest-tide was the greatest seen on land these many years, and of greatest consequence. But I have heard a bird sing there shall be yet greater deeds done ere many moons be past. Therefore it is we came hither to thee, I and Lafayres, that be your friends from of old, to pray thee let us go with thee on thy quest across the world after thy brother, for sorrow of whose loss the whole world languisheth, and thereafter let us go with you on your going up to Corsey." "O Juss," said the prince, "we would not in after days that men should say, On such a time fared the demons into perilous lands enchanted, and by their strength and valorousness set free the Lord Goldry-Bluzco, or haply there ended their life's days in that glorious quest. But Gazlock and Lafires were not in it. They bade their friends farewell, hung up their swords, and lived a quiet and merry life in Zajezaculo. So let their memory be forgot. Lord Just sat silent a minute, as one much moved. "O Gazlock," he said at length, "I'll take thine offer without another word. But unto thee, dear prince, I must bare mine heart somewhat. For thou here art come not stressed in our quarrel to spend thy blood, only to put us yet deeper in thy debt. And yet small blame it were to thee, shouldst thou in dishonourable sort revile me, as many shall cry out against me, for a false friend unto thee and a friend forsworn." But the Prince Lafires brake in upon him, saying, "I prithee have done, or thou'lt shame me quite. Whate'er I did in Carsi, 'twas but equal payment for your saving of my life in leading Anguna. So was all evened up betwixt us. Think then no more on't, but deny me not to go with you to Impland. But up to Carsi I'll not go with you. For albeit I am clean broke with Witchland, against Corrund and his kin I will not draw sword, nor against my lady sister. A black curse on the day I gave her white hand to Corrund. She holdeth too much of our stock, methinks. Her heraldry is hearts, not hands, and giving her hand she gave her heart. 'Tis a strange world." "Lafires," said Just, "we weigh not so lightly our obligation unto thee. Yet must I hold my course, having sworn a strong oath that I would turn aside neither to the right nor to the left until I had delivered my brother Goldry out of bondage. So sware I, or ever I went that ill journey to Carsi, and was closed in prison fast, and by thee delivered. Nor shall blame of friends, nor wrongful misprision, nor any power that is, shake me in this determination. But when that is done, no rest remaineth unto us, till we win back for thee thy rightful realm of Pixieland, and many good things besides to be a token of our love." Said the prince, "Thou doest right. If thou didst other, thou'dst have my blame." "And mine thereto," said Gazlock. "Do not I grieve, think'st thou, to see the Princess Armeline, my sweet young cousin, grow every day more wan o' the cheek and pale, and all for sorrows and teen for her own true love, the Lord Goldry-Bluzco? And she so carefully brought up by her mother, as nothing was too dear or hard to be brought to pass for her desire, thinking that a creature so noble and perfect could not be trained up too delicately. I deem to-day better than to-morrow, and to-morrow better than his morrow, to set sail for wide-fronted Impland." All this while the Lord Brandok de Har said never a word. He sat back in his chair of ivory and chrysoprase, now toying with his golden finger-rings, now twisting and untwisting the yellow curls of his mustachios and beard. In a while he yawned, rose from his seat, and fell to pacing lazily up and down. He had hitched up his sword across his back under his 2 elbows, so that the shoe of the scabbard stood out under one arm and the jewelled hilt under the other. His fingers strummed little tunes on the front of the rich rose velvet doublet that cased his chest. The spring sunlight, as he paced from shine to shade and to shine again, passing the tall windows, seemed to caress his face and form. It was as if spring laughed for joy, beholding in him one that was her own child, clothed to outward view with so much loveliness and grace, but full besides to the eyes and finger-tips with fire and vital sap, like her own buds bursting in the Brankdale coppices. In a while he ceased his walking and stood by the Lord Grow, who sat a little apart from the rest. "How thinkest thou, Grow, of our counsels? Art thou for the straight road or the crooked? For Carsi or Zorarach?" "Of the roads," answered Grow, "a wise man will choose ever that one which is indirect. For but consider the matter, thou that art a great cragsman. Think our life's course a lofty cliff. I am to climb it, sometime up, sometime down. I pray, whither leadeth the straight road on such a cliff? Why, no whither. For if I will go up by the straight way, 'tis not possible. I am left gaping, whilst thou by crooked courses hast gained the top. Or if down, why, 'tis easy and swift, but then no more climbing evermore for me. And thou clambering down by the crooked way, shalt find me a dead and unsightly corpse at the bottom." "Gramercy for thy me's and thees," said Lord Brandok de Har. "Well, 'tis a most weighty principle, backed with a most just and lively exposition. How dost thou interpret thy maxim in our present question?" Lord Grow looked up at him. "My lord, you have used me well, and to deserve your love and advance your fortunes, I have pondered much how you of Demonland might best obtain revenge upon your enemies. And I daily thinking hereupon, and conceiving in my head divers imaginations, can devise no means but one that in my fancy seemeth best, which is this." "Let me hear it," said Lord Brandok de Har. Said Grow, 'Twas ever a fault in you demons that you would not perceive how 'tis oft times good to draw the snake from her hole by another man's hand. Consider now your matter. You have a great force both for land and sea. Trust not too much in that. Oft hath he of the little force o'ercome most powerful enemies, going about to entrap them by sleight and policy. But consider yet again. You have a thing is mightier far than all your horses and spearmen and dragons of war, mightier than thine own sword, my lord, and thou accounted the best swordsman in all the world. What thing is that? Asked he. Groh answered, Reputation, my lord Brandok Dahar. This reputation of you demons for open dealings, even to your worst enemies. Tush, said he, 'tis but our way of the world. Moreover, 'tis, I think, a thing natural in great persons, of whatsoever country they be born. Treachery and double dealing proceed commonly from fear, and that is a thing which I think no man in this land comprehendeth. Myself, I do think that when the high gods made a person of my quality, they traced 'tween his two eyes something, I know not what, which the common sort durst not look upon without trembling. Give me but leave, said Lord Groh, and I'll pluck you a braver triumph in a little hour than your swords should win you in 2 years. Speak smooth words to Witchland, offer him composition, bring him to a council, and all his great men along with him. I'll so devise it, they shall all be suddenly taken off in a night, haply by setting upon them in their beds, or as we may find most convenient. All save Corrund and his sons, them we may wisely spare, and conclude peace with them. It shall not by 10 days delay your sailing to Impland, whither you might then proceed with light hearts and minds at ease. Very prettily conceived, upon my soul, said Brandok Dahar. Might I advise thee, thou'dst best not talk to Juss i' this manner, not now, I mean, while his mind's so bent on matters of weight and moment. Nor I should not say it to my sister Mevrian. Women will oft times take in sad earnest such a conceit, though it be but talk and discourse. With me 'tis otherwise. I am something of a philosopher myself, and thy jest ambleth with my humour very pleasantly. Thou art pleased to be merry, said Lord Groh. Many ere now, as the event hath proved, rejected my wholesome counsels to their own great hurt. But Brandok Dahar said lightly, Fear not, my Lord Groh, we'll reject no honest redes of so wise a counsellor as thou. But, and here was a light in the eye of him made Groh startle, did any man with serious intent dare bid me do a dastard deed, he should have my sword through the dearest part of's body. Lord Brandok Dahar now turned him to the rest of them. Juss, said he, friend of my heart, meseemeth you are all of one mind, and none of my mind. I'll e'en bid you farewell. Farewell, Gaslark, farewell, the Fieries. But whither away? Said Juss, standing up from his chair. Thou must not leave us. Whither but to mine own place, said he, and was gone from the chamber. Gaslark said, He's much incensed. What hast thou done to anger him? Mevrian said to Juss, I'll follow and cool him. She went, but soon returned, saying, No avail, my lords. He is ridden forth from Galing, and away as fast as his horse might carry him. Now were they all in a great stew, some conjecturing one thing and some another. Only the Lord Juss kept silence and a calm countenance, and the Lady Mevrian. And Juss said at length to Gaslark, This it is, that he chafeth at every day's delay that letteth him from having at Corineus. Certes I'll not blame him, knowing the vile injuries the fellow did him, and his insolence toward thee, madam. Be not troubled. His own self shall bring him back to me when time is, as no other power should do gainst his good will, he whose great heart heaven cannot force with force. And even so, the next night after, when folk were abed and asleep, Juss in his high bedchamber, sitting late at his book, heard a bridle ring. So he called his boys to go with him with torches to the gate. And there in the dancing torchlight came the Lord Brandok Dahar a-riding into Galing Castle, and somewhat of the bigness of a great pumpkin tied in a silken cloth hung at his saddle-bow. Juss met him in the gate alone. Let me down from my horse, he said, and receive from me thy bedfellow, that thou must sleep with by the lake of Ravery. Thou hast gotten it, said Juss. The hippogriff's egg, out of Jewel Tarn, by thyself alone? And he took the bundle right tenderly in his 2 hands. Ay, answered he, 'twas where thou and I made sure of it last summer, according to the word of her little martlet that first found it for us. The tarn was frozen, and 'twas tricky work diving, and most villainous cold. It is small marvel thou art a lucky man in thine undertakings, O Juss, when thou hast such an art to draw thy friends to second thee. I thought thou'dst not leave me, said Juss. Thought? Cried Brandok Dahar. Didst ever dream I'd suffer thee to do thy foolishnesses alone? Nay, I'll come first to the enchanted lake with thee, and let Bicarsi i' the meantime. Howbeit I'll do it gainst the stream of my resolution quite. Now was but 6 days more of preparation, and on the 2nd day of April was all ready in Lookinghaven for the sailing of that mighty armament, 59 ships of war, and 5 ships of burthen, and thrice 2,000 fighting men. Lady Mevrian sat on her milk-white mare overlooking the harbour, where the ships all orderly rode at anchor, shadowy grey against the sun-bright shimmer of the sea, with here and there a splash of colour, crimson or blue or grass-green, from their painted hulls, or a beam of the sun glancing from their golden masts or figureheads. Gro stood at her bridle rein. The Galing Road, winding down from Havishore Tongue, ran close below them, and so along the seashore to the quays at Lookinghaven. Along that road the hard earth rang with the tramp of armed men and the tramp of horses, and the light west wind wafted to Gro and Mevrian on their grassy hill snatches of deep-voiced battle chants, or the galloping notes of trumpet and pipe and the drum that sets men's hearts athrob. In the van rode the Lord Zig, 4 trumpeters walking before him in gold and purple. His armour from chin to toe shone with silver, and jewels blazed on his gorget and baldric and the hilt of his long straight sword. He rode a black stallion, savage-eyed, with ears laid back and a tail that swept the earth. A great company of horse followed him, and half as many tall spearmen, in russet leather jerkins plated with brass and silver. "These," said Mevrian, "be of Kellialand and the shore-steads of Arrowfirth, and his own vassalage from Ramerick and Amardidale. That is Hesper Golthring rideth a little behind him on his right hand. He loveth 2 things in this world, a good horse and a swift ship. He on the left, he hath a helm of dull silver set with raven's wings. So long of the leg thou'dst say if he rode a little horse he might straddle and walk it. Stirkmere of Blackwood. He is of our kin. Not yet 20 years old, yet since Crotheringside accounted one of our ablest." So she showed him all as they rode by, Peridor of Sewell, captain of the Melanders, and his nephew Stipmar, Fendor of Shalgrath, with Emmer and Galt, his young brother, that was newly healed from the great wound Corineus gave him at Crotheringside, these leading the shepherds and herdsmen from the great heaths north of Switchwater, who will hold by the stirrup, and so with their light bucklers and little brown swords go into battle with the horsemen full gallop against the enemy. Bremery, in his ram's horn helm of gold and broidered surcoat of scarlet velvet, leading the dalesmen from Onwardlythe and Tiveranderdale. Trentmore of Scorridale, with the north-eastern levies from Byland, and the Strands and Breakingdale. Astor of Rattray, lean and lithe, bony-faced, gallant-eyed, white of skin, with bright red hair and beard, riding his lovely roan at the head of 2 companies of spearmen, with huge iron-studded shields, men from about Drepperby and the south-eastern dales, landed men and home men of Lord Goldry Blusco. Then the island dwellers from the west, with old Quoz of Dolney riding in the place of honour, noble to look on with his snowy beard and shining armour, but younger men their true leaders in war. Melchor of Strufy, great-chested, fierce-eyed, with thick brown curling hair, horsed on a plunging chestnut, his byrnie bright with gold, a rich mantle of creamy silk brocade flung about his ample shoulders, and Thornrod on his little black mare, with silver byrnie and bat's winged helm, he that held Carnarvie in fee for Lord Brandok de Har, keen and ready like an arrow drawn to the barbs. And after them the Westmark men, with Arnund of Bye their captain, and after them 400 horse, not to be surpassed for beauty or ordered array by any in that great army, and young Camerar riding at their head, burly as a giant, straight as a lance, apparelled like a king, bearing on his mighty spear the pennon of the Lord of Crothering. "Look well on these," said Mevrian as they passed by, "our own men of the Side and Thunderfirth and Straparden. Thou mayst search the wide world, and not find their like for speed and fire, and all warlike goodliness and readiness to the word of command. Thou look'st sad, my lord." "Madam," said Lord Gro, "to the ear of one that useth, as I use, to consider the vanity of all high earthly pomps, the music of these powers and glories hath a deep underdrawn of sadness. Kings and governors that do exult in strength and beauty and lustihood and rich apparel, showing themselves for a while upon the stage of the world and open dominion of high heaven, what are they but the gilded summer fly, that decayeth with the dying day?" "My brother and the rest must not stay for us," said the lady. "They meant to go aboard as soon as the army should be come down to the harbour, for their ships be to sail out first down the firth. Is it determined indeed that thou goest with them on this journey?" "I had so determined, madam," answered he. She was beginning to move down towards the road and the harbour, but Gro put a hand on the rein and stopped her. "Dear lady," he said, "these 3 nights together I have dreamed a dream, a strange dream, and all the particulars thereof betokening heavy anxiety, increase of peril and savage mischief, promising some terrible issue. Methinks if I go on this journey thou shalt see my face no more. Oh, fie, my lord, cried she, reaching him her hand. Give never a thought to such fond imaginings. 'Twas the moon but glancing in thine eye. Or if not, stay with us here and cheat fate. Gro kissed her hand and kept it in his. My lady Mevrion, he said, fate will not be cheated, cog we never so wisely. I do think there be not many extant that in a noble way fear the face of death less than myself. I'll go o' this journey. There is but one thing should turn me back. And 'tis, said she, for he fell silent on a sudden. He paused, looking down at her gloved hand resting in his. A man becometh hoarse and dumb, said he, if a wolf hath the advantage first to eye him. Didst thou procure a wolf to dumb me when I would tell thee? But I did once, enough to let thee know. O Mevrion, dost thou remember Neverdale? He looked up at her. But Mevrion sat with head erect, like her patroness divine, with sweet cool lips set firm, and steady eyes fixed on the haven and the riding ships. Gently she drew her hand from Gro's, and he strove not to retain it. She eased forward the reins. Gro mounted and followed her. They rode quietly down to the road, and saw southward side by side to the harbour. Ere they came within earshot of the quay, Mevrion spake and said, Thou'lt not think me graceless nor forgetful, my lord. All that is mine, oh, ask it, and I'll give it thee with both hands. But ask me not that I have not to give, or if I gave, should give but false gold. For that's a thing not good for thee nor me, nor I would not do it to an enemy, far less to thee, my friend. Now was the army all got on a shipboard, and farewells said to Vol and those who should abide at home with him. The ships rode out into the firth all orderly, their silken sails unfurled, and that great armament sailed southward into the open seas under a clear sky. All the way the wind favoured them, and they made a swift passage, so that on the 30th morning from their sailing out of Lookinghaven they sighted the long grey cliff line of Impland the Moor, dim in the low blown spray of the sea, and sailed through the Straits of Melikafkaz in column ahead, for scarce might two ships pass abreast through that narrow way. Black precipices shut in the straits on either hand, and the seabirds in their thousands whitened every little ledge of those cliffs like snow. Great flights of them rose and circled overhead as the ships sped by, and the air was full of their plaints. And right and left, as of young whales blowing, columns of white spray shot up continually from the surface of the sea. For these were the stately winged gannets fishing that sea strait. By threes and fours they flew, each following other in ordered line, many mast heights high, and ever and anon one checked in her flight as if a bolt had smitten her, and swooped head foremost with wings half spread, like a broad-barbed dart of dazzling whiteness, till at a few feet above the surface she clapped close her wings, and cleft the water with a noise as of a great stone cast into the sea. Then in a moment up she bobbed, white and spruce with her prey in her gullet, rode the waves a minute to rest and consider, then with great sweeping wing-strokes up again to resume her flight. After a mile or two the narrows opened, and the cliffs grew lower, and the fleet sped past the red reefs of Uaimnaz and the lofty stacks of Pashnamarthra, white with seagulls, onto the blue solitude of the Didonian Sea. All day they sailed south-east with a failing wind. The coastline of Melikafkaz fell away astern, paled in the mists of distance, and was lost to sight, until only the square cloven outline of the Pashnamarthran Islands broke the level horizon of the sea. Then these too sank out of sight, and the ships rode on south-eastward in a dead calm. The sun stooped to the western waves, entering his bath of blood-red fire. He sank, and all the ways were darkened. All night they rode gently on under the strange southern stars, and the broken waters of that sea at every oar-stroke were like fire burning. Then out of the sea to eastward came the day-star, ushering the dawn, brighter than all night's stars, tracing a little path of gold along the waters. Then dawn, filling the low eastern skies with a fleet of tiny cockle-shells of bright gold fire. Then the great face of the sun ablaze, and with the going up of the sun a light wind sprang up, bellying their sails on the starboard tack, so that ere day declined the sea-cliffs of Muelva hung white above the spray-mist on their larboard bow. They beached the ships on a white shell-strand behind a headland that sheltered it from the east and north. Here the barrier of cliffs stood back a little from the shore, giving place for a fertile dell of green pasture, and woods clustering at the foot of the cliffs, and a little spring of water in the midst. So for that night they slept on board, and next day made their camp, discharging the ships of burthen that were laden with the horses and stuff. But the Lord Just was minded not to tarry an hour more in Muelva than should suffice to give all needful orders to Gazlark and Lafires what they should do, and when expect him again, and to make provision for himself and those who must fare with him beyond these shadowing cliffs into the haunted wastes of the Maruna. Ere noon was all this accomplished, and farewells said, and these lords, Just, Spitfire, and Brandok Dahar, set forth along the beach southward towards a point where it seemed most hopeful to scale the cliffs. With them went the Lord Groh, both by his own wish, and because he had known the Maruna aforetime, and these particular parts thereof. And with them went besides those two brothers-in-law, Zig and Astar, bearing the precious burden of the egg, for that honour and trust had just laid on them at their earnest seeking. So with some pains after an hour or more they won up the barrier, and halted for a minute on the cliff's edge. The skin of Groh's hands was hurt with the sharp rocks. Tenderly he drew on his lamb's-wool gloves, and shivered a little, for the breath of that desert blew snell and frore, and there seemed a shadow in the air southward, for all it was bright and gentle weather below whence they were come. Yet albeit his frail body quailed, even so were his spirits within him raised with high and noble imaginings, as he stood on the lip of that rocky cliff. The cloudless vault of heaven, the unnumbered laughter of the sea, that quiet cove beneath, and those ships of war, and that army camping by the ships, the emptiness of the blasted walls to southward, where every rock seemed like a dead man's skull, and every rank tuft of grass hag-ridden. The bearing of those lords of Demonland who stood beside him, as if naught should be of commoner course to them pursuing their resolve than to turn their backs on living land and enter those regions of the dead. These things, with a power as of a mighty music, made Groh's breath catch in his throat, and the tear spring in his eye. In such wise, after more than 2 years, did Lord Just begin his second crossing of the Maruna, in quest of his dear brother the Lord Goldred Blusko. End of chapter 27. Chapter 28 of The Worm Ouroboros. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Recording by Jason Mills. The Worm Ouroboros by E. R. Edisson. Chapter 28. Zorarach Nampsarion. Of the Lord Just's riding of the Hippogriff to Zorarach, and of the ills encountered by him in that accursed place, and the manner of his performing his great enterprise to deliver his brother out of bondage. Lulled with light stirring airs, too gentle soft to ruffle her glassy surface, warm incense-laden airs, sweet with the perfume of immortal flowers, the charmed lake of Ravari dreamed under the moon. It was the last hour before the dawn. Enchanted boats, that seemed builded of the glowworm's light, drifted on the starry bosom of the lake. Over the sloping woods the limbs of the mountains lowered, unmeasured, vast, mysterious in the moon's glamour. In remote high spaces of night beyond glimmered the spires of Kostrapivracha, and the virgin snows of Romshir and Kostrabellorn. No bird or beast moved in the stillness, only a nightingale singing to the stars from a coppice of olive trees near the Queen's Pavilion on the eastern shore, and that was a note not like a bird's of Middle-earth, but a note to charm down spirits out of the air, or to witch the imperishable senses of the gods, when they would hold communion with holy night, and make her perfect, and all her lamps and voices perfect in their eyes. The silken hangings of the pavilion door, parting as in the portal of a vision, made way for that queen, fosterling of the most high gods. She paused a step or two beyond the threshold, looking down where those lords of Demonland, Spitfire, and Brandok Dahar, with Groh and Zig and Astar, wrapped in their cloaks, lay on the goeny dewy banks that sloped down to the water's edge. "Asleep," she whispered, "even as he within sleepeth against the dawn. I do think it is only in a great man's breast sleep hath so gentle a bed when great events are toward." Like a lily, or like a moonbeam strayed through the leafy roof into a silent wood, she stood there, her face uplifted to the starry night, where all the air was drenched with the silver radiance of the moon. And now in a soft voice she began supplication to the gods, which are from everlasting, calling upon them in turn by their holy names, upon grey-eyed Pallas, and Apollo, and Artemis the fleet huntress, upon Aphrodite, and Here, queen of heaven, and Ares, and Hermes, and the dark-tressed earth-shaker. Nor was she afraid to address her holy prayers to him who, from his veiled porch beside Acheron and Leith Lake, binds to his will the devils of the undergloom, nor to the great Father of all, in whose sight time from the beginning until today is but the dipping of a wand into the boundless ocean of eternity. So prayed she to the blessed gods, most earnestly requiring them, that under their countenance might be that ride, the like whereof earth had not known, the riding of the Hippogriff, not rashly and by an ass, as heretofore to his own destruction, but by the man of men who with clean purpose and resolution undismayed should enforce it carry him to his heart's desire. Now in the east beyond the feathery hilltops and the great snow wall of Romshire, the gates were opening to the day. The sleepers wakened and stood up. There was a great noise from within the pavilion. They turned wide-eyed, and forth of the hangings of the doorway came that young thing new hatched, pale and doubtful as the new light which trembled in the sky. Just walked beside it, his hand on the sapphire mane. High and resolute was his look, as he gave good morrow to the Queen, to his brother and his friends. No word they said, only in turn gripped him by the hand. The hour was upon them. For even as day striding on the eastern snowfields stormed night out of high heaven, so, and with such swift increase of splendour, was might bodily and the desire of the upper air born in that wild steed. It shone as if lighted by a moving lamp from withinward, sniffed the sweet morning air, and whinnied, pawing the grass of the waterside, and tearing it up with its claws of gold. Just patted the creature's arching neck, looked to the bridle he had fitted to its mouth, made sure of the fastenings of his armour, and loosened in the scabbard his great sword. And now up sprang the sun. The Queen said, "Remember, when thou shalt see the Lord thy brother in his own shape, that is no illusion. Mistrust all else, and the almighty gods preserve and comfort thee." Therewith the Hippogriff, as if maddened with the daybeams, plunged like a wild horse, spread wide its rainbow pinions, reared and took wing. But the Lord Just was sprung astride of it, and the grip of his knees on the ribs of it was like brazen clamps. The firm land seemed to rush away beneath him to the rear. The lake and the shore and the islands thereof showed in a moment small and remote, and the figures of the Queen and his companions like toys, then dots, then shrunken to nothingness, and the vast silence of the upper air opened and received him into utter loneliness. In that silence earth and sky swirled like the wine in a shaken goblet, as the wild steed rocketed higher and higher in great spirals. A cloud billowy white shut in the sky before them. Brighter and brighter it grew in its dazzling whiteness as they sped towards it, until they touched it, and the glory was dissolved in a grey mist that grew still darker and colder as they flew, till suddenly they emerged from the further side of the cloud into a radiance of blue and gold, blinding in its glory. So for a while they flew with no set direction, only ever higher, till at length, obedient to Just's mastery, the Hippogriff ceased from his sports and turned obediently westward, and so in a swift straight course, mounting ever, sped over Ravery towards the departing night. And now indeed it was as if they had verily overtaken night in her western caves. For the air waxed darker about them, and always darker, until the great peaks that stood round Ravery were hidden, and all the green land of Zimiamvia, with its plains and winding waters, and hills and uplands and enchanted woods, hidden and lost in an evil twilight. And the upper heaven was ateem with portents, whole armies of men skirmishing in the air, dragons, wild beasts, bloody streamers, blazing comets, fiery strakes, with other apparitions innumerable, but all silent and all cold, so that just his hands and feet were numbed with the cold, and his mustachios stiff with hoarfrost. Before them now, invisible till now, loomed the gaunt peak of Zorarach, black, wintry, and vast, still towering above them for all they soared even higher, grand and lonely above the frozen wastes of the Psarian glaciers. Just stared at that peak till the wind of their flight blinded his eyes with tears, but it was yet too far for any glimpse of that which he hungered to behold. No brazen citadel, no coronal of flame, no watcher on the heights. Zora, like some dark queen of hell, that disdains that presumptuous mortal eyes should dare to look lovely on her dread beauties, drew across her brow a veil of thunder-cloud. They flew on, and that steel-blue pall of thunderous vapour rolled forth till it canopied all the sky above them. Just tucked his 2 hands for warmth into the feathery armpits of the Hippogriff's wings, where the wings joined the creature's body. So bitter cold it was, his very eyeballs were frozen and fixed. But that pain was a light thing beside somewhat he now felt within him, the like whereof he never before had known. a death-like horror, as of the houseless loneliness of naked space, which gripped him at the heart. They landed at last on a crag of black obsidian stone, a little below the cloud that hid the highest rocks. The hippogriff, crouched on the steep slope, turned its head to look on Juss. He felt the creature's body beneath him quiver. Its ears were laid back, its eye wide with terror. "Poor child," he said, "I have brought thee an ill journey, and thou but 1 hour hatched from the egg." He dismounted, and in that same instant was bereaved, for the hippogriff, with a hoarse scream of terror, took wing and vanished down the murk air, diving headlong away to eastward, back to the world of life and sunlight. And the Lord Juss stood alone in that region of fear and frost and the soul-quailing gloom, under the black summit rocks of Zora Rach. Setting, as the Queen had counselled him to do, his whole heart and mind on the dread goal he intended, he turned to the icy cliff. As he climbed, the cold cloud covered him, yet not so thick but he might see 10 paces distance before and about him as he went. Ill sights enow, and enow to quail a strong man's resolution, showed in his path. Shapes of damned fiends and gorgons of the pit, running in the way, threatening him with death and doom. But Juss, gritting his teeth, climbed on and through them, they being unsubstantial. Then uprose an eldritch cry. "What man of Middle-earth is this that troubleth our quiet? Make an end! Call up the basilisks! Call up the golden basilisk, which bloweth upon and setteth on fire whatsoever he seeth! Call up the starry basilisk, and whatso he seeth it immediately shrinks up and perisheth! Call up the bloody basilisk, who if he see or touch any living thing, it floweth away so that naught there remaineth but the bones." That was a voice to freeze the marrow. Yet he pressed on, saying in himself, "All is illusion, save that alone she told me of." And naught appeared, only the silence and the cold, and the rocks grew ever steeper, and their ice-glaze more dangerous, and the difficulty like the difficulty of those barriers of Emshir, up which more than 2 years ago he had followed Brandok Dahar, and on which he had encountered and slain the beast Manticora. The leaden hours drifted by, and now night shut down, bitter and black and silent. Sore weariness bodily was come upon Juss, and his whole soul weary withal and near to death, as he entered a snow-bedded gully that cut deep into the face of the mountain, there to await the day. He durst not sleep in that freezing night, scarcely dared he rest lest the cold should master him, but must keep for ever moving and stamping and chafing hands and feet. And yet, as the slow night crept by, death seemed a desirable thing that should end such utter weariness. Morning came with but a cold alteration of the mist from black to grey, disclosing the snow-bound rocks, silent, dreary, and dead. Juss, enforcing his half-frozen limbs to resume the ascent, beheld a sight of woe too terrible for the eye. A young man, helmed and graithed in dark iron, a blackamoor with goggle eyes and white teeth agrin, who held by the neck a fair young lady kneeling on her knees, and clasping his as in supplication, and he most bloodily brandishing aloft his spear of 6 foot of length, as minded to reave her of her life. This lady, seeing the Lord Juss, cried out on him for succour very piteously, calling him by his name, and saying, "Lord Juss of Demonland, have mercy, and in your triumph over the powers of night, pause for an instant to deliver me, poor afflicted damosel, from this cruel tyrant. Can your towering spirit, which hath quarried upon kingdoms, make a stoop at him? Oh, that should approve you noble indeed, and bless you for ever." Surely the very heart of him groaned, and he clapped hand to sword, wishing to right so cruel a wrong. But on the motion he bethought him of the wiles of evil that dwelt in that place, and of his brother, and with a great groan passed on. In which instant he beheld sidelong how the cruel murtherer smote with his spear that delicate lady, and detrenched and cut the 2 master veins of her neck, so as she fell dying in her blood. Just mounted with a great pace to the head of the gully, and looking back beheld how blackamoor and lady both were changed to 2 coiling serpents. And he laboured on, shaken at heart, yet glad to have so escaped the powers that would have limed him so. Darker grew the mist, and heavier the brooding dread which seemed elemental of the airs about that mountain. Pausing well-nigh exhausted on a small stance of snow, just beheld the appearance of a man armed who rolled prostrate in the way, tearing with his nails at the hard rock and frozen snow, and the snow was all one gore of blood beneath the man. And the man besought him in a stifled voice to go no further, but raise him up and bring him down the mountain. and when Juss, after an instant's doubt betwixt pity and his resolve, would have passed by, the man cried and said, Hold! For I am thy very brother thou seekest, albeit the king hath by his art framed me to another likeness, hoping so to delude thee. For thy love's sake be not deluded. Now the voice was like to the voice of his brother Goldry, howbeit weak. But the Lord just bethought him again of the words of Sophonisba the queen, that he should see his brother in his own shape, and naught else must he trust. And he thought, It is an illusion, this also. So he said, If that thou be truly my dear brother, take thy shape. But the man cried as with the voice of the Lord Goldry Blusco, I may not, till that I be brought down from the mountain. Bring me down, or my curse be upon thee for ever. The Lord Just was torn with pity and doubt and wonder, to hear that voice again of his dear brother so beseeching him. Yet he answered and said, Brother, if that it be thou indeed, then bide till I have won to this mountain top and the citadel of brass, which in a dream I saw, that I may know truly thou art not there, but here. Then will I turn again and succour thee. But until I see thee in thine own shape I will mistrust all. For hither I came from the ends of the earth to deliver thee, and I will set my good on no doubtful cast, having spent so much and put so much in danger for thy dear sake. So with a heavy heart he set hand again to those black rocks, iced and slippery to the touch. Therewith uprose an eldritch cry, Rejoice, for this earth-born is mad! Rejoice, for that was not perfect friend, that relinquished his brother at his need. But just climbed on, and by looking back, beheld how in that seeming man's place writhed a grisful serpent. And he was glad, so much as gladness might be in that mountain of affliction and despair. Now was his strength near gone, as day drew again toward night, and he climbed the last crags under the peak of Zora. And he, who had all his days drunk deep of the fountain of the joy of life, and the glory and the wonder of being, felt ever deadlier and darker in his soul that lonely horror which he had first tasted the day before at his first near sight of Zora, while he flew through the cold air portent-laden, and his whole heart grew sick because of it. And now he was come to the ring of fire that was about the summit of the mountain. He was beyond terror or the desire of life, and trod the fire as it had been his own home's threshold. The blue tongues of flame died under his foot-tread, making a way before him. The brazen gates stood wide. He entered in. He passed up the brazen stair. He stood on that high roof floor which he had beheld in dreams. He looked, as in a dream, on him he had crossed the confines of the dead to find. Lord Goldry Blusco, keeping his lone watch on the unhallowed heights of Zora. Not otherwise was the Lord Goldry, not by an hair's breadth, than as Juss had aforetime seen him on that first night in Costra Bellorn, so long ago. He reclined propped on one elbow on that bench of brass, his head erect, his eyes fixed as on distant space, viewing the depths beyond the starshine, as one waiting till time should have an end. He turned not at his brother's greeting. Juss went to him and stood beside him. The Lord Goldry Blusco moved not an eyelid. Juss spoke again and touched his hand. It was stiff, and like dank earth. The cold of it struck through Juss's body and smote him at the heart. He said in himself, He is dead. With that the horror shut down upon Juss's soul like madness. Fearfully he stared about him. The cloud had lifted from the mountain's peak and hung like a pall above its nakedness. Chill air that was like the breath of the whole world's grave. Vast blank cloud barriers. Dim far forms of snow and ice, silent, solitary, pale, like mountains of the dead. It was as if the bottom of the world were open and truth laid bare. The ultimate nothing. To hold off the horror from his soul, just turned in memory to the dear life of earth, those things he had most set his heart on, men and women he loved dearest in his life's days, battles and triumphs of his opening manhood, high festivals in Gaeling, golden summer noons under the Westmark pines, hunting morns on the high heaths of Mealand, the day he first backed a horse, of a spring morning in a primrose glade that opened on Moonmere, when his small brown legs were scarce the length of his forearm now, and his dear father held him by the foot as he trotted, and showed him where the squirrel had her nest in the old oak tree. He bowed his head as if to avoid a blow. So plain he seemed to hear somewhat within him, crying with a high voice and loud, Thou art nothing! And all thy desires and memories and loves and dreams, nothing! The little dead earth-louse were of greater avail than thou, were it not nothing as thou art nothing. For all is nothing. earth and sky and sea and they that dwell therein. Nor shall this illusion comfort thee, if it might, that when thou art abolished these things shall endure for a season, stars and months return, and men grow old and die, and new men and women live and love and die and be forgotten. For what is it to thee, that shalt be as a blown-out flame? And all things in earth and heaven, and things past, and things for to come, and life and death, and the mere elements of space and time, of being and not being, all shall be nothing unto thee, because thou shalt be nothing for ever. And the Lord just cried aloud in his agony, Fling me to Tartarus! Deliver me to the black infernal furies! Let them blind me, seethe me in the burning lake, for so there should yet be hope. But in this horror of nothing is neither hope, nor life, nor death, nor sleep, nor waking, for ever, for ever. In this black mood of horror he abode for a while, until a sound of weeping and wailing made him raise his head, and he beheld a company of mourners walking one behind another about the brazen floor, all cloaked in funeral black, mourning the death of Lord Goldry-Bluzco, and they rehearsed his glorious deeds, and praised his beauty and prowess and goodliness and strength. Soft women's voices lamenting, so that the Lord Just's soul seemed as he listened to arise again out of annihilation's waste, and his heart grew soft again, even unto tears. He felt a touch on his arm, and looking up met the gaze of two eyes gentle as a dove's, suffused with tears, looking into his from under the darkness of that hood of mourning. And a woman's voice spake and said, This is the observable day of the death of the Lord Goldry-Bluzco, which hath been dead now a year, and we his fellows in bondage do bewail him, as thou mayst see, and shall so bewail him again year by year whiles we are on life. And for thee, great Lord, must we yet more sorrowfully lament, since of all thy great works done this is the empty guerdon, and this the period of thine ambition. But come, take comfort for a season, since unto all dominions faith hath set their end, and there is no king on the road of death. So the Lord Just, his heart dead within him for grief and despair, suffered her take him by the hand, and conduct him down a winding stairway that led from that brazen floor to an inner chamber fragrant and delicious, lighted with flickering lamps. Surely life and its turmoil seemed faded to a distant and futile murmur, and the horror of the void seemed there but a vain imagination, under the heavy sweetness of that chamber. His senses swooned. He turned towards his veiled conductress. She, with a sudden motion, cast off her mourning cloak, and stood there, her whole fair body bared to his gaze, open-armed, a sight to ravish the soul with love and all delight. Well nigh had he clasped to his bosom that vision of dazzling loveliness. But fortune, or the high gods, or his own soul's might, woke yet again in his drugged brain remembrance of his purpose, so that he turned violently from that bait prepared for his destruction, and strode from the chamber up to that roof where his dear brother sat as in death. Just caught him by the hand. Speak to me, kinsman! It is I, Just! It is Just, thy brother! But Goldry moved not, neither answered any word. Just looked at the hand resting in his, so like his own to the very shape of the fingernails and the growth of the hairs on the back of the hand and fingers. He let it go, and the arm dropped lifeless. It is very certain, said he, thou art in a manner frozen, and thy spirits and understanding frozen and congealed within thee. So saying, he bent to gaze close in Goldry's eyes, touching his arm and shoulder. Not a limb stirred, not an eyelid flickered. He caught him by the hand and sleeve as if to force him up from the bench, calling him loudly by his name, shaking him roughly, crying, Speak to me, thy brother, that crossed the world to find thee! But he abode a dead weight in Just's grasp. If thou be dead, said Just, then am I dead with thee. But till then I'll ne'er think thee dead. And he sat down on the bench beside his brother, taking his hand in his, and looked about him. Naught but utter silence. Night had fallen, and the moon's calm radiance and the twinkling stars mingled with the pale fires that hedged that mountain-top in an uncertain light. Hell loosed no more her denizens in the air, and since the moment when Just had, in that inner chamber, shaken himself free of that last illusion, no presence had he seen, no simulacrum of man or devil, save only Goldry his brother. Nor might that horror any more master his high heart, but the memory of it was but as the bitter chill of a winter sea, that takes the swimmer's breath for an instant as he plunges first into the icy waters. So, with a calm and a steadfast mind, the Lord Just abode there, his second night without sleep, for sleep he dared not in that accursed place. but for joy of his found brother, albeit it seemed there was in him neither speech nor sight nor hearing, just scarce wist of his great weariness. And he nourished himself with that ambrosia given him by the queen, for well he thought the uttermost strength of his body should now be tried in the task he now decreed him. When it was day he arose, and taking his brother Goldry bodily on his back, set forth. Past the gates of brass just bore him, and past the barriers of flame, and painfully and by slow degrees down the long northern ridge which overhangs the Psarian glaciers. All that day, and the night following, and all the next day after were they on the mountain, and well nigh dead was just for weariness, when on the second day, an hour or two before sundown, they reached the moraine. Yet was triumph in his heart, and gladness of a great deed done. They lay that night in a grove of strawberry trees, under the steep foot of a mountain some 10 miles beyond the western shore of Ravary, and met Spitfire and Brandok Dahar, who had waited with their boats 2 nights at the appointed spot, about eventide of the following day. Now as soon as Juss had brought him off the mountain, this frozen condition of the Lord Goldry was so far thawed that he was able to stand upon his feet and walk. But never a word might he speak, and never a look they gat from him, but still his gaze was set and unchanging, seeming when it rested on his companions to look through them and beyond them, as at some far thing seen in a mist, so that each was secretly troubled, fearing lest this condition of the Lord Goldry Bluscoe should prove remediless, and this that they now received back from prison but the poor remain of him they had so much desired. They came a land, and brought him to Sophonisba the queen, where she made haste to meet them on the fair lawn before her pavilion. The queen, as if knowing beforehand both their case and the remedy thereof, took by the hand the Lord Juss, and said, O my lord, there yet remaineth a thing for thee to do, to free him thoroughly, that hast outfaced terrors beyond the use of man to bring him back. A little stone indeed to crown this building of thine, and yet without it all were in vain, as itself were vain without the rest that was all thine. And mine is this last, and with a pure heart I give it thee. So saying, she made the Lord Juss bow down, till she might kiss his mouth, sweetly and soberly, one light kiss. And she said, This give unto the Lord thy brother. And Juss did so, kissing his dear brother in like manner on the mouth. And she said, Take him, dear my lords, and I have utterly put out the remembrance of these things from his heart. Take him, and give thanks unto the high gods because of him. Therewith the Lord Goldry Bluscoe looked upon them, and upon that fair queen, and the mountains, and the woods, and the cool lake's loveliness, as a man awakened out of a deep slumber. Surely there was joy in all their hearts that day. End of chapter 28.